The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, very good morning to you. 6 o'clock, Tuesday, the 6th of February.
Good morning. This is Breakfast with Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster.
A nation shocked. King Charles diagnosed with cancer and set to postpone public duties as he faces treatment.
Buckingham Palace's shock announcement dominates the front pages. The King started treatment yesterday and spent the night at Clarence House. But what does this mean for the day-to-day running of the country now the King is not carrying out public duties? Find out shortly.
Tributes have flown in overnight from leaders across the UK and the Commonwealth as they wish the King well.
Yes, wishes and messages of support flooding in from around the world and across the UK, uniting people across the political spectrum. Meanwhile, the King is expected to still continue with his duties, which are not in front of the camera. I will bring you more on that shortly.
Chemical attacker at large. The manhunt for Abdullah Zidi enters its 6th day as police arrest a 22-year-old man suspected of assisting him.
And in sport, Manchester City beat Brentford. There's trouble for Red Bull's Christian Horner. And Hendomania hits Amsterdam. Hits Amsterdam.
As far as the weather's concerned, it's a day of significant contrasts. Cold in the far north, mild in the far south, and in between, a spell of wet weather. I'll have the full details in the weather coming up soon.
The story dominating the news this morning, shock as King Charles reveals he's been diagnosed with cancer.
The news came after successful treatment for an enlarged prostate, during which a Buckingham Palace source revealed a separate issue of concern was noted by surgeons.
The King will now begin a schedule of treatment and continue to undertake official paperwork, although his doctors have advised him to cancel public duties.
Well, Buckingham Palace has said the King's feeling wholly positive about his treatment.
Meanwhile, the Duke of Sussex has spoken with the King and will travel home to see him in the coming days.
Well, joining us now with all the latest is our royal correspondent Cameron Walker, who joins us from Buckingham Palace. Good morning to you, Cameron. This is turning into something of an annus horribilis for the royal family, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is, Isabel. The King has not been on the throne that long, and we have now had a number of health scares with various members of the royal family. But of course, the King is our head of state, and the fact that he has been diagnosed with what Buckingham Palace describe as a form of cancer really has come as a shock. And you just see it with the tributes pouring in across the globe. It is understood that it is not prostate cancer, and this separate issue was discovered when the King was in hospital a few weeks ago receiving treatment for an enlarged prostate, which Buckingham Palace said was benign. The King's being treated as an outpatient in hospital, and he started his treatment yesterday, but he is going to not be spending any nights in hospital at this stage. He is spending the night at Clarence House. He travelled back from Sandringham yesterday morning, the last time he was seen in public was that Sandringham walked to the church with the Queen on Sunday morning. But in other news, which perhaps emphasises the seriousness of the situation, is that the Duke of Sussex, a source close to the Duke of Sussex, has said not only has he spoken to His Majesty about the diagnosis, but he's also making plans to fly very shortly across the Atlantic to London to spend time with his father. Of course, they've not been on the best of terms in recent years, and I think this highlights perhaps that the King and the Duke of Sussex want to perhaps have some kind of reconciliation and indeed spend time with each other following this diagnosis. As for Prince William, the Prince of Wales, I'm told he is always, as you would expect, in regular contact with the King, and the King personally told Prince William ahead of the announcement at 6 o'clock by Buckingham Palace last night. I'm told the King can still carry on with constitutional duties, so although we're not going to be seeing him in public, he's still going to be going through his red boxes, signing government papers, reading cabinet minutes. He's also going to be taking part in Privy Council meetings and having his weekly audience with the Prime Minister. But of course, if doctors' advice changes and perhaps he can't do it in public, perhaps provisions will be made for the King to do that virtually. Buckingham Palace are really keen that we don't speculate as to the exact diagnosis. We know it's a form of cancer and we know it's not prostate cancer, but beyond that, they really don't want us to speculate. It's a really tricky balance for the palace, because on the one hand, the King is a private individual. He has a right to private medical information. But at the same time, he's our head of state, and the public do have a right to know about the health of our monarch. Other members of the royal family are continuing with their public duties, we're told. But of course, we're not going to be seeing the King in public for some time. But Buckingham Palace said last night that the King remains positive about the treatment he's receiving and looks forward to returning to public duties as soon as possible.
Cameron, thank you very much indeed. We now go to royal biographer Angela Lan this morning. Good morning, Angela. Little did we think when we spoke yesterday that this news was imminent.
Yes, no, it was such a shock. I sort of cried yesterday. I thought it was such a terrible tragedy for him, even though he can recover and be strong and is very positive. It just seemed he's had such a lot in these last 4 years that so many deaths and such a very difficult time with Harry that it would be yet another blow. But he's strong and he will do his best to stay firm and do what the doctor says, but also push himself forward a bit.
Yeah, interesting choice of words, do his best. I mean, those were the words we heard Queen Camilla using on public engagements last week when we're told the royal couple already knew the diagnosis. Clearly, he is being, as the palace has said, wholly positive about it all and trying to channel his mother in the sense of being free from panic in a crisis.
Yes, that's right. It's interesting, isn't it? Because I thought that was doing his best was a difficult phrase to say. And I wondered why, because it should have been a little bit better, you know. And I thought also the fact that he'd stayed in another night meant that they were looking for something and they found it.
What do you think he will find with Prince Harry?
Well, that's the point, isn't it? I mean, a lot of people saying, oh, this will be the repairing their relationship. But I think it's how Harry behaves that matter. He hasn't wanted to see his father unless he promised to apologise for not treating Meghan properly and for not giving him enough support. And it's also as if he's had a list of several hundred things that he goes back to his early childhood. So we will have to see. I think it's going to be very difficult for Harry, not the King, who's always loved him and always had a door open. But as far as Harry is concerned, he's a very changed person. He's very hard. And he's very determined, and he has to please Meghan. So it'll be very difficult to him between choosing whether he does do what Meghan tells him to do and what he wants to do about his father. He was very, very close to his father when he was younger, far closer than William, who is now very close to his father. And it might just open something in his heart that will make him feel that he's very lucky to have a father like that and very grateful for all the things he's had. But on the other hand, he does have a very difficult wife who runs their relationship.
Could it open a way back into the forefront of the royal family for Harry?
Well, there are lots of coulds, but it's actually dependent on what Meghan thinks, isn't it? I mean, she can't stand this country, and she does really dislike the royal family very much. So he's going to have a difficult time. I think it will be a real shock for him, and perhaps he shocks him into realizing that he's had a tremendously good life. But the thing is that it's difficult to trust him. If you remember, after the Prince Philip died, about 5-10 minutes after the funeral, he rushed up to his father and said, that he was not having enough money and he was not listening to him enough. And then his father said to both him and William, please, boys, don't make my final years a misery. That was alleged that he said, and Harry sold that to a TV program and earn some money. So we have to be very careful that he doesn't do something like this again, goes back home and then says all the details of what he's had. And I hate to be so negative like this, but this is a very different Harry. It's a hard nut Harry now.
Yeah, and lots of people feel once bitten, twice shy when it comes to Harry. What about his brother in all of this, Angela Lan? Because, this is somebody who's estranged from his brother. He's lost his mother in tragic circumstances, recently lost his granny, who was one of the few who understood the responsibility he faces. One of his uncles is disgraced, and now his father and wife both unwell. He must be feeling incredibly lonely right now.
Harry said to me when I was writing his biography, we couldn't be more closer than we are. We trust each other totally. We are together. We have the most amazing relationship because we've had the same experiences, terrible, difficult experiences. But now that's not the case. And William has got very used to Harry being rude and unkind, and actually also attacking his wife very rudely. And that would cut him through right to the core, even more than himself, because he loves her and knows what she's given up and how happy she's made him. And so I think it will be very, very difficult time for William to actually manage all these things that he has to do. A wife that is recovering, but we don't know what from, a father who's got this problem now, and a lot of work leaning on him. And I think that's very, very hard for him. And it depends, he doesn't want to have anything to do with Harry at the moment. And you can't blame him because he's been so rude and told untruths about both William and Catherine. I don't know how you completely can change that. You run into each other's arms. It's difficult, isn't it? It's difficult to completely turn over a relationship and forget all the past. I don't think people can do that.
Angela Lan, fascinating listening to you. Thank you very much indeed for your analysis on the subject, and hopefully we'll speak again soon. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, joining us now to have a look at the political reaction to all of this and what's happening on the international front, our political correspondent, Catherine Foster. Catherine?
Yes, good morning, Eamonn and Isabel. Well, it's a moment that has really brought people across the United Kingdom and indeed the world together, political leaders from all over the world expressing their support last night for King Charles following this diagnosis. Most notably, of course, President Biden. He was caught on camera and he said, "I'm concerned about him. I just heard about his diagnosis. I'll be talking to him, God willing." He later tweeted saying just how difficult he understands that dealing with cancer is. he has a personal involvement because his wife Jill had cancerous skin lesions removed just last year, and one of his sons died tragically of brain cancer a few years ago. So this is something that President Biden really does know and understand very deeply. Messages too from across the Commonwealth, including Anthony Albanese from Australia, saying His Majesty King Charles has always reached out to us in our country's toughest moments, showing kindness and doing the right thing, tough decisions. All of us are thinking of him and his family at this very hard time. We wish him well for a speedy recovery. Worth saying, of course, he believes that Australia should be a republic, but all those sorts of issues are forgotten, aren't they, at a time like this? I think also worth having a quick look at the response across the United Kingdom. Both Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer, of course, wishing him well and hoping for a speedy recovery. But I think too interesting the response of the leaders of the devolved nations, including Humza Yousaf of the Scottish National Party up in Scotland, and Michelle O'Neill, the very new Northern Irish First Minister. Of course, she wants a united Ireland, but both expressing their support and their good wishes. Michelle O'Neill, of course, also went to the King's coronation, something which would have been unthinkable just a few years earlier, with those connections going back between Sinn Féin and the IRA. But all of these issues forgotten at a time like this, everybody really united, wishing the King well. Worth saying too, of course, that although he won't be doing any of his public engagements, he is expected to be continuing with his parliamentary work, the red box of papers that the monarch is sent, signing off on bills, etc. A lot of work that the monarch has to do constitutionally, which will still be continuing. And of course, those weekly audiences with the Prime Minister in person, they hope, but if necessary, of course, that may be done by Zoom.
Catherine, thank you very much indeed. The time is 6:15. Let's have a look at what else is happening news-wise.
The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has arrived in Saudi Arabia overnight, the first stop on his latest tour of the Middle East. It marks Blinken's 5th visit to the region since Hamas's deadly October the 7th attack on Israel. It comes amid a perilous moment for the region, with retaliatory US strikes on Iran-backed militia across Syria, Iraq and Yemen.
A whole day of snow could be on the way. A yellow warning issued for large parts of England and Wales later this week. The Met Office says the winter weather could lead to disruption with power cuts and travel delays. The warning runs from 3 a.m. on Thursday to the same time on Friday morning and stretches from Cumbria and the Scottish border down to Cambridgeshire and the Midlands in England.
The actor Ian Lavender, famous for his role as Private Pike in Dad's Army, has died at the age of 77. Lavender, who joined the show at the age of 22 and held the role for a decade, was the last surviving star of Dad's Army. Lavender is also remembered for his role as Derek Harkinson in the BBC soap EastEnders.
I was just looking last night. Dad's Army was on 2 channels. It's on UK Gold and it's on BBC 4. And I don't know how they do that, but they do it. And with Private Pike, there's that famous scene where Captain Mannering and they're held hostage by Germans. And he says, "What is your name?" And he says, "Don't tell them, Pike." Very funny, very good. Ian Lavender. Now, a 22-year-old man was arrested and later released on bail for suspicion of assisting the chemical attacker last week. The Metropolitan Police says the man was detained following a raid early on Monday.
Well, the suspect has been named as Abdul Azadi and has been on the run ever since the attack on a woman and her 2 young girls in Clapham last Wednesday.
We're joined by Senior Lecturer in Advanced Policing at Liverpool, John Moores, and that's Peter Williams. Peter, good morning to you.
Yes, good morning, Eamonn.
This guy's leading the police a merry dance, it seems.
Well, that's what it appears to be on the face of it. But very often, when we get what we call or the media refer to a manhunt, they can take a lot longer than what's actually perceived. For example, I'm sure your viewers remember of July last year, where a male called Daniel Califf, who was on remand on terrorism offences, staged a Colditz-style escape from Wandsworth Prison. Again, there was the sort of media interest and the public interest, of course, and an early arrest was expected. But of course, that took 5 weeks before he was actually eventually arrested. Unless there's specific sightings of the individual, the police have got to know where to look. And very often, what the difference will be, and it will be in this case, is old-fashioned, painstaking police work, which will lead the trail to where this suspect is located. That's what happened in the case of Daniel Califf, and I fully anticipate it's going to happen in this particular instance as well.
Meaning what, Peter? Is he being sheltered by someone? Is he being protected by someone? How is he able to survive being on the run?
Well, that's a very good question, because I understand that he used his bank card, or the last time it was used was in London, presumably for that tube train ride last Wednesday. It's not been used since. So it doesn't look as if he's certainly heading for the Newcastle area, because, of course, that would require funds. It would also leave a footprint of a location. So I think there's two things happening. He's either with associates, and I'll probably comment on that in a minute, or I would think as well, if he wants to evade, but it'd only be for a shorter period, to let things die down, so to speak. He could be amongst the rough sleepers and people sleeping out in London, although I very much doubt that. I think he's probably with an associate. Now, the police, I understand, from the vehicle which was involved, have recovered his mobile phone. Now, the mobile phone is effectively the digital eyewitness of the 21st century now in relation to criminal investigations. And of course, they will be going through that in painstaking detail and building up the intelligence picture. And the intelligence picture will include his associates. And it is from that where I referred to at the beginning when I said painstaking police work. It is that which will lead them to the whereabouts of this particular suspect. We've already seen the arrest of one individual who's not being charged, but it indicates that the police are being proactive in their quest to track him down, because I suspect that has come from a lead or an indication from that mobile phone.
Peter, the front of the Telegraph's quoting the police is saying there is a possibility he could actually be dead. And certainly from what, the injuries he sustained, he could be very, very unwell, which could explain why he's gone under the radar a little bit.
Well, I mean, I don't know the full extent of his injuries, but I suppose if there's reporting that, perhaps that is an issue. But if that was the case, I would have thought, depending on where he is, there would have been some sort of report or indication from that. But they won't be, whilst they won't rule that out, that will not deter them from their inquiries and from what they need to do to actually locate where he is. What I would say as well, there is not a criminal investigation these days, it's a successful one in any case, which does not contain some element of forensic evidence. Now, that evidence could be from a mobile phone, but more likely in this case, I suspect it's probably going to come from CCTV. And they will be of painstaking work behind the scenes, putting that together in order to plot, if you like, the route and escape route, all the other elements they can derive from it, including facial recognition, and that will be ongoing behind the scenes at the moment.
But you did touch upon associates there, and just finally, I mean, do you believe that that he has helped, that there are associates?
Well, I understand he's from the Afghan community, and there's a lot of Afghan people that are in the same sort of situation as himself in relation to seeking asylum. So I suspect he will have contacts in relation to people in a similar situation, and he will have built up a network. He may well be located in Newcastle, but I'm no doubt he's got connections and associates in the London area. And of course, that element, in relation to those people, in relation to asylum seekers, etc., will be another element that the police team will be looking at as well, all in order to put this intelligence picture together. At the end of the day, the police have got to know where to look, unless it's a sighting by a member of the public, and we haven't had that. And it will come down to that intelligence picture being put together piece by piece, which will reveal the location of where this individual is.
Peter Williams is a senior lecturer in advanced policing at Liverpool John Moores. Thank you very much indeed for your time and your analysis. Thank you. Right, the weather situation, snow is on its way. Let's get an update with Aidan.
Hello, very good morning to you. It's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office. It's going to be a cold day in the far north, mild in the far south, and in between a weather front bringing a spell of heavy rain. Certainly a damp start for Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, then the rain edges south into much of northern England, parts of Wales, heavy and persistent for a time around the middle part of the day, and it turns damp later across the Midlands, South Wales and parts of Norfolk as well. But we keep the brighter skies further north. In fact, skies brighten for Northern Ireland and Northern England. However, it is going to feel colder here, with northerly winds bringing snow showers to the north and west of Scotland. The far south stays dry ahead of the rain, but it is cloudy and mild here. 13, 14, perhaps even 15 Celsius. But the rain does eventually arrive into the evening, persisting throughout much of the night. Heavy in places, with that rain especially lingering across the far south and southwest. That's where the mildest air will be, 7 or 8 Celsius. Further north, under clearer skies, a frosty start to Wednesday, but a bright start for Northern England, Northern Ireland and Scotland. Still some sleet and snow showers for the north and west of Scotland, and increasingly for parts of Northern Ireland as well. Bright skies in between any wintry showers. Actually, it's a bright day for many on Wednesday, mostly to the north of the M4 corridor. To the south of that, we do have a lot of cloud and increasingly damp conditions.
Well, if you are worried about the snow, here's something to cheer you up. Your chance to get your hands on £18,000 of cash in our Great British Giveaway.
This is your chance to win £18,000 cash in our very latest Great British Giveaway. Cash to spend on anything you like. That's like having an extra £1,500 in your bank account each month for a whole year. What would you use that for?
Well, congratulations, you've won £10,000.
Oh my God, that's unbelievable. That's brilliant news.
For another chance to win £18,000 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB02 PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday, the 23rd of February. Good luck.
Good luck. We've got the sport coming your way right after this short break.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Francis, Just Stop Oil have in the past broken the law. I remember distinctly the Dartford crossing. That ended up with 2 jailed, I believe, if I remember correctly. Is it ever justified in your view?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. I mean, I would have to say yes. I mean, we're trying to preserve my life, your lives, the lives of your family, and it's not just the planet that we're trying to protect, it's the lives of millions of people. And, you know, we know from history that we have to break the law in order to put pressure on the government and to be listened to.
No one would doubt your sincerity in your views. You genuinely believe in what you fight for. But there are others who think differently. For example, there are Islamist extremists who believe that people will go to hell unless they convert to Islam. They will sincerely, perhaps, break the law in order to force people to convert. In their view, they might be saving people's lives for eternity. There might be abortion activists who say that babies are being murdered and to save their lives we need to break the law to stop people having abortions. Why do you get to say that your moral conviction is the one that's right and other people's individual moral conviction are those that are wrong?
So what's really integral to the Just Stop Oil campaign is the fact that it is a non-violent campaign. That's what separates us from the examples that you've just given. We're absolutely dedicated non-violence, both as a tactic and as a principle. So though we might be breaking the law...
If individuals take it upon themselves to break the law for whatever their course is, surely the way that we decide what society wants in general is democratic and within the law.
Well, of course, we know also that protest is absolutely integral to maintaining and upholding a democracy, and in particular, non-violent protest. I mean, I really can't express to you how severe this situation is, and I'm sure you know this.
Some quite serious Formula One news away from the track to report with Paul Coyte.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, this is an interesting one, actually. Christian Horner, principal of Red Bull Racing, husband of Jerry Halliwell, of course, hugely successful with Red Bull. Now, he's been investigated by Red Bull. Now, the season begins very soon. They're about to begin testing. February 15th, the new car is going to be launched. So this is a very important time for the team. Now, after a complaint of inappropriate and controlling behaviour, are the words that we've seen has been made by a female colleague. So officials at Red Bull's HQ in Salzburg have had an independent lawyer brought in to conduct an inquiry, and pretty much that's all we know. There was rumours about this. They denied it over the weekend, and now they've released this. And I think there's quite a lot more to it than maybe meets the eye, because although Christian Horner completely denies the allegations that are being made, there seems to be a power struggle at Red Bull, which has happened. Now, this is from October 22. Dietrich Mateschitz is the name of the man that founded Red Bull. And Christian Horner was very much his boy, and he wanted the racing team to develop, and it was very much his baby. Now, since he died, as often happens in big companies, there's a big power shift. Who controls it? Who wants this? How does Christian Horner get involved? Now, I'm not doubting for a moment any of the allegations and things that have gone on, but what's interesting is how this has now come out. And also because of the power situation which is going on, he's known to have disagreed with some of the high-up people at Red Bull. So there may be more to this story than actually meets the eye. So I'll be very interested to see how it pans out.
OK.
In the Premier League, Man City doing what Man City do, winning.
They do, again, yeah. So they're now within a couple of points.
And they came from
at the top. Yeah, Brentford, and you know, it was Phil Foden was unbelievable yesterday. So with Phil Foden, you can't even get the England, hat-trick. Can't even get the England side. But he scored a hat-trick. Brentford's Neil Maupay. Now, he seems to have been up to his old tricks again. Just a couple of days ago, he was involved in the altercations with James Maddison. Do you remember we were talking about the darts being thrown? Now, what's going on there? Now, this is after the game. Now, Neil Maupay, he's housery. There's a housery thing. He's a bit of a lippy geezer and gets himself involved in some shenanigans. I'm scouting around the outside here. But him and Kyle Walker. Now, we know the stories about Kyle Walker, so there was something that was said to Kyle Walker. I wonder what that could possibly be. And then afterwards, Pep Guardiola spoke to him. Nobody spoke about this either afterwards. Pep was asked and said, no, there's nothing to say about it. But something went on and something was being said and something has kicked off at the end.
Sorry, who is he? Who does he play for?
He plays for Brentford. He's on loan from Everton.
Oh, what's he doing stand in the middle of Guardiola?
Well, that's it.
Ireland.
But Pep has gone over to speak to him because there was something that happened between him and Kyle Walker. So he's a bit lippy and something has been said that upset other people.
Here's something that really surprised me. I mean, congratulations to him, but I'm sort of scratching my head.
Yeah.
Henderson's number 6 shirt, Jordan Henderson, so he's been transferred to Ajax.
Yes, that's right.
And that has become the fastest-selling Ajax shirt in history.
It's Hendomania. Has taken over Amsterdam.
But in all seriousness, nobody in England would go Hendo mad.
I know, it's incredible. So he's moved over to Ajax. He would have worn his normal number 14 shirt, but that was Johan Cruyff's, the legend Johan Cruyff, so he can't have that. His number 6, they've gone mad for him. And it really is bizarre. I mean, Gareth Southgate went over to watch him, obviously, for England. Everybody's saying it's the greatest thing. And this is Ajax, who've produced some of the greatest players over the years. But some fans are saying he's the greatest signing that Ajax have ever had. He's played a couple of games, and I'm kind of lost in this. So I've looked at some of the Hendo merchandise.
Yeah.
Because everybody's... Look, for example, you just mentioned the shirt. I mean, can we see the shirt? So you can actually buy your Jordan Henderson shirt from the Ajax shop, which is available. There's some other things as well, which hopefully we will see. There we are. Oh, look at that. How about that one? That's the Jordan Henderson Hug Me Pillow. Look at that. It's a little pillow there. Henderson, 6. Or that one is the Jordan Henderson bedspread.
Oh, look, with the three crosses, which is the symbol of Amsterdam.
That's right, yeah. And so the Jordan Henderson, and there's the shirt finally. So they have gone Jordan Henderson bananas in Amsterdam.
He has literally stood in poo and come out smelling of roses, hasn't he?
That's right, over in Saudi Arabia. Let's not forget, he's gone over there. Everybody's up in arms, and he's left Saudi Arabia without enough money and gone into Amsterdam because it's probably, let's go to Ajax. Someone's going to take him. He's no spring chicken. It's all gone crazy for him. And everybody's loving it. There's coffee shops in Amsterdam, as Isabel, I'm sure you well know. But you get Jägermeister, a free Jägermeister shot every time Ajax score a goal.
Really?
Yeah, I just haven't found it yet. I'm just looking for it.
Now, when you come back next time round, we're going to be talking about Mauricio Pochettino.
Yep.
And how he could be unsackable.
I think he could be unsackable.
OK, let's talk about that next time round. Thank you very much, Paul.
Stay with us still to come. In just a moment, we'll be looking at the front pages. Big stories, of course, only really one story in town making the news today, with Scarlett Maguire and Oscar Redrops making a comeback on the show.
Lee Anderson's Real World, Fridays from 7 p.m.
Dr. Jane Jones, who's the clinical lead for Care After Combat.
Yeah.
Jane, thanks for coming. And just tell me a little bit about your organisation. What do you do?
OK, well, thank you for having me here so we can talk about Care After Combat. So we are an organisation, a charity, who work into the prison system, working with military veterans who've somehow got involved with the justice system and...
So there's quite a high population of ex-servicemen and women in our prisons. Why is that, do you think?
So 2014, the government did a review of who was resident in UK prisons, and what they found were that military veterans are the highest occupational group, and this obviously raises some concerns. Yeah. So the government wanted to do something about that, and so they supported Care After Combat initially just as a scoping exercise, really, to see if there was any way we could help these men and women actually, understand the problems that led to offending behaviour and go on to lead successful lives.
So what sort of offending behaviour are we talking typically for people that's in prison that's actually served in our armed forces?
Primarily, it's violence.
Yeah.
So that is the highest offence that we work with.
Okay.
But of course, the military, as with everybody else, it's the full range of offending behaviour.
OK, so we're in a pub, Jane, Dr. Jane, and I guess for some people, the odd tip of alcohol is good, a bit of fun of a weekend, relax, let your hair down. But for some people, alcohol is not always their best friend, and I guess that plays a part in some of your veterans that end up inside.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, speaking from my own experience, a good 2/3 of the people I work with have some kind of mental health problem or mental health difficulty, struggling to either adapt into civilian life or with some of the traumas they've experienced during service. People might self-medicate with alcohol to manage some of those thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
Hi, Rishi Sunak here. Join me for a special GB News People's Forum Live on Monday the 12th of February. I want to hear about the issues that matter to you. For your chance to be part of the audience and to put your questions to me, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com. See you there.
to the stage of the programme where we'll be discussing what's in the newspapers with Scarlett Maguire, former Labour advisor, and Oscar Redrop, who is a former advisor to Boris Johnson. And Oscar, we want to start with you. Obviously, all the headlines, all the front pages that deal with King Charles. But I want to go on to some other news, and this is about retirement, and the Express are covering this. Tell us more.
Well, it feels a lot further away for me, having read this story. So millions of middle-aged workers could be forced to wait until they're 71 before they qualify for that state pension. This, I think, has really shocked quite a few people, and I think there's going to have to be a greater degree of flexibility on something like this. I mean, for one, I feel wrongly, rightly, there are younger demographics who feel like they really have already, over the past few decades, carried quite a large burden. And also, the first thing that struck me was that it's quite easy for people, you know, who have their desk jobs and, you know, all those kind of... But, like, manual labourers, I mean, like... I just don't understand how that's going to work. You know, these people who, you know, literally break their backs building this country.
Yeah, but Oscar, there's a reason that they're extending the age, and that's because there's just an ageing, growing population. So what on earth do? You cannot have this huge number of people all retiring early and being funded by a reduced, smaller working population.
And I completely understand that kind of
I
complexity.
I totally take your point. Anyone who works with their hands, anybody who works with the sweat of their brow, how on earth are they expected to keep going until 71?
And those type of jobs in these types of conversations are often forgotten about. And, you know, if I was having my breakfast reading that and I was about to go do a huge shift on the tools or something like that, I'd be thinking, that is literally not possible for me.
Well, we have the Work and Pension Secretary coming up in just a few minutes' time. Scarlett, what do you think of retirement? This doesn't... I mean, when does this come into effect, Oscar, as to who it affects?
So
is this going to affect me? Is this going to affect Scarlett?
No,
I think you two might be all right without being too...
But actually, it's not just manual labourers. I mean, it's not just sort of people on building sites. I mean, teachers, right? I mean, teachers have a really tough job. And they're standing in front of a classroom every time. Nurses, carers. I mean, it is massive. And then, you know, I mean, another story that's in the paper is actually the number of people who are long-term sick, massively more than we expected. And I think Oscar's right that it's got to be flexible. And I remember some years ago they were talking about a flexible retirement. It was 60 to 70. I mean, a lot of people, you know, can't find it difficult working actually in their late 50s. And I know I've been on here with lots of young men, not quite as young as Oscar probably, who go on, I'm gonna go on, you know, forever. Well, you know, you wait till you get older and you start having problems, and it's really terrible.
Except we look at the States and we could possibly see Biden versus Trump, two men in their late 70s. We've got our head of state in the news today, mid-70s. You know, life is long nowadays, and you can still do a lot in your 70s.
Oh, you can. You can. I mean, a friend of mine who's 81, who's just finished making, it was out last night, a series on Ukraine. I mean, so she's a TV thing, and the last one, she was being interviewed, and they said, well, now that you're 80, you know, this is your swan song, and she said, don't be ridiculous. She's beginning, you know, a 3 to 4 part series on Israel-Palestine.
Yeah, it's like Attenborough, you know, the same age as the Queen.
But what those people absolutely love their jobs. Yeah. But I think I think a lot of people don't, and it is really, really tough for them.
And it's changing as well. I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of people watching this who, you know, may very well have those kind of desk jobs. But WhatsApp, emails, like constant 24-hour... Like, work is not a 9-to-5 thing now. We are constantly on call, you know, with, as I said, with things like WhatsApp. And I think that, as time goes on, I think people will just slightly have to have a period of time in their life where they go, enough.
And so you were talking about the long-term sick here, and this makes the papers, both the Times and the Telegraph today, Scarlett. So there's a record, nearly 3 million people long-term sick, 400,000 more have dropped out of employment altogether.
Look, obviously some of this is long COVID, and some of this is actually people who haven't been treated in time by the NHS. I mean, things like, as you know, back problems, right, can actually put people out forever. And so we've got an ageing population. We've got people like Oscar who are having to keep us all going. And then, you know, among the 40s and 50-year-olds, there's lots of people who cannot work. And actually, what we need to do is we need to look at them, and it's not that they won't work. I mean, a lot of them would like to work, but actually can't. And I mean, you know, I was reading an interview with a woman who said, well, of course I'd like to do admin. She'd been a carer. She was too ill to go on being a carer. She could have done it. I can't retrain. I can't get a job. I mean, that's the other problem when we're talking about manual labour is that if you're sick, so you could work, but you can't get the work that you need to do.
Yeah. Because you're competing with people who are sort of more tech savvy and they're already in that sphere.
I mean, yes, I don't know a friend of mine. I don't know anybody apart from, you know, my kids and things who could do a job that took in tech.
Right, Oscar, let's talk about playground misogyny. How's it being fuelled?
This is algorithms used by social media platforms. I'm sure you know TikTok, Instagram, all the rest of them, which those algorithms kind of almost hardwire into young people's brains. And I imagine parents are not always aware of the content that is being consumed either. We've seen some horrific, very recent news stories around that kind of stuff. And the report saying this is now being kind of completely normalised in schools. And yeah, I mean, obviously we have the online safety bill in Parliament, which is relatively contentious in terms of, you know, access, freedom, but also when you see reports like this, I can understand real parental concern.
Yeah, and this focus from The Guardian is on fuelling misogyny, playground misogyny. Here we are in this kind of post-feminism world where our young boys are regressing back to these kind of women-hating positions because of the algorithms that they find on social media. Horrifying to mums of boys and mums of girls.
Yeah,
and dads.
Yeah, no, no.
Speak for myself there.
No, absolutely. And I always think about, you know, if you're in government and you are given a report like this, and obviously it's front page of the page 2 of the Guardian.
It's on the front.
Yeah, on the front as well. I always wonder, you know, from a policy position, you know, what can you do and what are the best roads forward? It's really difficult.
Around the age that people are allowed onto social media.
For sure. I'm kind of off it now.
Yeah.
And my mental health, I have to say, and I know that some of us kind of almost need it for work purposes, whatever it is, but my mental health being off it is
and you're an
changed.
adult. And yes, you are
true.
spending a lot of time in Westminster, and people sometimes describe that as a playground. Imagine the mental health of children trying to cope with these kinds of things.
No, I mean, I find it absolutely terrifying. I mean, when they use the word playground, you sort of think of primary schools, and it's just, I mean, it is just terrible that. You know, what are social media firms doing? I mean, they go on about the problem, I mean, the very real problem, I mean, about suicides, about torture, about all of that stuff. But basic misogyny, I mean, you know, we shouldn't be allowing... I mean, there's something wrong with the algorithms. And that is the problem, is that these are devised by real people. They're not, you know, it's not all AI. It begins with people's prejudices. And you sort of wonder how many young men who don't really like women work in tech.
Idolise people like Andrew Tate.
Well,
and all these children signing their homework MMAS to their female teachers, which is make me a sandwich. You can guarantee most of those households, it's both parents are working, shouldn't be the sole responsibility of the woman to prepare the food. And yet these young boys make me a sandwich to their female teacher. Just the most horrendous, pernicious misogyny. Awful.
Wow. Right, let's ponder on that. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll have Mel Stride. Mel Stride's the Work and Pensions Secretary, so a few issues raised there in the paper discussion we'll be able to put to him after this.
GB News Breakfast. every day from 6 a.m.
I'm interested in your royal protocol story there about how the Queen would not be expected to visit the King more than once at the hospital or whatever. What would the benefit of that be? I'm just trying to work out why that would be.
Well, I suppose it's to avoid lots of people outside making a big... Panicking, and all the photographers. But otherwise, I think it's very strange. It's sort of not showing your emotion, whereas Camilla will show her emotion because she loves him so much.
But any normal person would go and visit their loved ones in hospital.
Yes, they would, but you see, they never went with them, even when they went in. And only rarely would they go maybe once, if it's quite a long stay. But otherwise, they don't. They must talk on the phone. But I think this, you want to hug, you want to chat, you want all those things. And I think, good to her. I mean, she's so good. She's following all the routine.
Yes.
And what is expected of her, more so, because she's been working very, very hard the last month. And but when it comes to actually showing her caring for her husband and the King, she wants to be there with him.
And I believe he's probably expected to be continuing with his red boxes whilst he's in there, still working, but from his sick bed.
No, I don't think he can take the red boxes into hospital. I think they will be ready for him when he comes out.
Okay, so complete rest from work.
And he might have some paperwork, but I think those are so confidential that they can't be taken in. I mean, if he falls asleep and they're there, you know, you don't want to risk it. I'm sure he's got protection all the time, but I think it's not done. I don't think that's not done.
Well, he changed the location for the procedure, didn't he, so that the taxpayer didn't have to pay for 2 sets of security at 2 different hospitals?
Yes.
Scarlett and Oscar here going through the papers. We are awaiting the presence of the Work and Pension Secretary, Mel Stride. But until we do, let's talk, Scarlett, about the King and his cancer diagnosis.
Well, I mean, obviously, it came as an incredible shock to everybody, but it must have been an awful shock to him because, you know, there he thought he was going into hospital, ordinary prostate. And you know, I know from experience, I mean, the 2 most frightening words are cancer and chemotherapy. And one, although they're not talking about his treatment, when they say treatment that is going to go on for some time, clearly it is.
We look at you and my heart rises and gladdened because you are a survivor of both of those.
But I'm a survivor. It was very, very... I mean, it wasn't as easy as it should have been. I mean, can I say that for most people, you know, a lot of people, you get cancer and it really is a small beer. I mean, lots of people, you get breast cancer, it's a tiny little operation and a bit of radiotherapy and it's over. Right, mine, of course, decided to be dramatic. But actually, the trick with cancer is going in early. And that's what we need to say.
To the King.
Well, that's what we hope, right? I mean, because it seemed to be almost an accident. I mean, a happy accident that he happened to be in there for his prostate, and then they thought, this is a bit odd, and did some things. And yes, it's early enough that we're not talking terminal, but the earlier you get it, and that's why when people think, I wonder what this is, they should go to their GP.
And if we're looking for silver linings, Oscar, and this is the take in Inside the Mail today, Harry flying in, and many people feeling like this could be a moment to put their differences aside and perhaps, you know, decide blood is thicker than water, time for reconciliation.
Absolutely, and I think in some ways, maybe people, you know, people my age sometimes feel quite detached from the royal family or they're not particularly supportive of it. But often when things like this happen, you realise that these are human beings and it makes you talk about really, you know, just as Scarlett has there actually, you know, people talk about important issues through the royal family. They have a really important presence in our lives in that sense, I think. And I think, again, I think that if Harry as it seems like to be the case, if there can be a real reconciliation, I think that even for people who don't have a particular interest or even loosely support the royal family, they can watch a father and a son who've had real difficulties coming together. And I'm sorry, I don't believe that you can't be affected by something like that and moved by something like that. I have to say, just on the King, actually, I think when Her Majesty the Queen passed away, there was a slight elephant in the room in terms of the vacuum that she would fill, and I think people were concerned. But King Charles, I think, has the British public have warmed him so much. He's grown into the role brilliantly, and at a time of stability, we will hope he gets better.
OK, Oscar. Thank you very much, Oscar and Scarlett. They'll be back in 45 minutes' time as we break off now to talk to the Work and Pension Secretary, Mel Stride, who you'll be saying you've got some good news for everybody today.
Well, Eamonn, good morning. Well, what we have got is the third in a series of 3 cost of living payments. This one of £299, which from today, between today and the 22nd of February, will be going out to around 8 million low-income households up and down the country. So that's there to help with, the kind of cost of living pressures that we're facing at the moment.
Lots of people will be hearing that and will be relieved, because everybody knows how hard it is to get through with the huge cost of energy bills in this day and age. News also around today about the number of pensioners set to far outstrip those of working age in the future, making the current pension unsustainable, and it could go up the age of retirement to 71.
Well, that, I believe, is an external report. It's not one that the government has produced. And we have a very clear process for determining the increase of the state pension age, i.e. the age at which you retire. I took a decision some months back to continue with the rise to 68 between 2026 and 28, but to defer any decision on any future increases into the next Parliament. So it will be something for a future Secretary of State, who knows, maybe me, to take in due course, but not a decision for now.
Of course, that wouldn't be easy to win an election with that kind of decision, would it? I mean, what was the reason for kicking the can down the road on that?
Well, there was actually an uncertainty around the data, because one of the things that you look at very closely when you take that decision is longevity, how long people are going to, on average, live, and in turn, what proportion of their lives do you think it's reasonable that they should have in retirement? And of course, what COVID did was really make those kind of calculations rather difficult, because it was such a huge externality that we have to really see how that works through. So there was no requirement to take that decision immediately. There will be in the coming years, and that will be a better time to actually take that kind of decision.
Mr. Stride, tell us, this £299, do you have to apply? How come this money is available? How come we can afford this money?
Well, this will be money paid to around 8 million low-income households who will be on benefits like universal credit. They may be on tax credits, they may be on pension credit. Eamonn, you asked if you had to apply. You don't. It will be automatically provided into people's bank accounts starting today. The entry in the bank account will be COL for the cost of living, followed by a national insurance number, and then clearly the amount of £299. Now that comes on top of previous payments, bringing these payments in total over the last year up to £900. You ask how we afford this. Well, this is all baked into the plans that the Office for Budget Responsibility has gone through with a fine tooth comb, and has confirmed that this and all our other measures do meet our fiscal targets. And while I'm on the issue of plans, Eamonn, I mean, one of the important things here, and it's important you ask this question, is that we do have a plan to help people with these kind of pressures, unlike Labour, where we just hear nothing at all, no plan whatsoever. They have nothing to say about these issues, Stride, even because they've got no plan.
We're very short on time, about 20 seconds, if you'll indulge me, but I just want a line from you on the launch of Popular Conservatism today under Elizabeth Truss. She wants to restore democratic accountability. Do you recognise that desire?
Well, look, the Conservative Party is a very broad church. There are lots of ideas, and I think it's important that the different parts of the party do come together and ventilate different views as to how we best move forward as a political party. We've always been adapting through history. That's why we're one of the longest living and most successful political parties in the world. So I welcome all of this kind of debate. I do have to make this other point, though. The one area in the political spectrum where you just don't see any of this kind of debate is the Labour Party at the moment, because they're absolutely petrified about coming out with something that's actually solid, new ideas, things that people are going to discuss and decide whether they like or not.
Mel Stride, thank you very much for your time this morning. We've got to leave it there. Here's your weather picture.
Thank you.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, very good morning to you. It's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office. It's going to be a cold day in the far north, mild in the far south, and in between a weather front bringing a spell of heavy rain. Certainly a damp start for Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, then the rain edges south into much of northern England, parts of Wales, heavy and persistent for a time around the middle part of the day, and it turns damp later across the Midlands, South Wales and parts of Norfolk as well. But we keep the brighter skies further north. In fact, skies brighten for Northern Ireland and Northern England. However, it is going to feel colder here, with northerly winds bringing snow showers to the north and west of Scotland. The far south stays dry ahead of the rain, but it is cloudy and mild here. 13, 14, perhaps even 15 Celsius. But the rain does eventually arrive into the evening, persisting throughout much of the night. Heavy in places, with that rain especially lingering across the far south and southwest. That's where the mildest air will be, 7 or 8 Celsius. Further north, under clearer skies, a frosty start to Wednesday, but a bright start for Northern England, Northern Ireland and Scotland. Still some sleet and snow showers for the north and west of Scotland, and increasingly for parts of Northern Ireland as well. Bright skies in between any wintry showers. Actually, it's a bright day for many on Wednesday, mostly to the north of the M4 corridor. To the south of that, we do have a lot of cloud and increasingly damp conditions.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to the programme. It's 7 o'clock on Tuesday, the 6th of February.
Wherever you're watching, wherever you're listening from, this is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
A nation shocked. King Charles diagnosed with cancer and set to postpone public duties as he faces treatment.
Buckingham Palace's shock announcement dominates the front pages. The King started his treatment yesterday and spent the night at Clarence House. But what does this mean for the day-to-day running of the country now the King is no longer carrying out public duties? Find out shortly.
Tributes have been pouring in from leaders across the world as they wish the King well.
In other news this morning, the chemical attacker still at large. The manhunt for Abdul Azaidi enters its 6th day as the Metropolitan Police arrest a 22-year-old man suspected of assisting Azaidi.
Police say this is effectively a nationwide manhunt, but the focus is very much on South London as suspected sightings continue to pour in.
And in the sport, Red Bull are investigating Christian Horner. Manchester City beat Brentford 3-1. And is Mauricio Pochettino unsackable?
As far as the weather's concerned, it's a day of significant contrasts. Cold in the far north, mild in the far south, and in between, a spell of wet weather. I'll have the full...
Dominating the news, of course, this morning is the shock as King Charles reveals he's been diagnosed with cancer.
The diagnosis came after successful treatment for an enlarged prostate, where a separate issue of concern was noted by surgeons.
The King will now begin a schedule of treatment, although his doctors have advised him to cancel public duties.
Well, joining us now with all the latest is our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker. Good morning to you, Cameron, at Buckingham Palace for us. Turning into a bit of an annus horribilis for the royal family, isn't it?
Yeah, just a bit, Isabel. Of course, there's been a number of health scares over recent months, but this clearly is very significant because the King is our head of state and he has been diagnosed with what Buckingham Palace describe as a form of cancer. Now, it's understood it's not prostate cancer, and this separate condition was discovered when the King was in hospital a few weeks ago, receiving treatments for an enlarged prostate, which was very much benign. The King started his first round of treatment yesterday as an outpatient in hospital, but he's not spending nights in hospital. He is staying at home at Clarence House, just down the road from where I am at Buckingham Palace. But in other news yesterday, perhaps highlighting the seriousness of the situation, is a source close to the Duke of Sussex says that not only has he spoken to his father, the King, about his diagnosis, but he is making plans to fly imminently, really, across the Atlantic back to London to spend time with his father. They've not been, as we know, on the best of terms over the last few years, with a bombshell memoir, Netflix series, etc. But this clearly shows that there is a willingness here for the King's youngest son to spend time with his father following that cancer diagnosis. As you would expect, Prince William, the Prince of Wales, is in regular contact with the King, and it's thought that the King personally contacts both his sons and indeed his siblings to tell them of the news that he has a form of cancer before the Buckingham Palace's public announcement at 6 o'clock last night. It's also understood that the King, although we're not going to be seeing him in public, can carry out his constitutional duties behind the scenes. So he's still going to be going through his red boxes, signing government papers, reading cabinet minutes. He's also expected to continue his weekly audiences with the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, as well as attend Privy Council meetings. But clearly, if the medical advice changes, then perhaps provisions will need to be made for the King to carry out some of those private engagements virtually. But of course, he's not going to be seen in public. It's thought that councillors of state are not going to be needed to deputise on behalf of the King. So they are members of the royal family over the age of 21 in the line of succession who can deputise on behalf of the King. I'm told that is not necessary. And members of the royal family, including the Queen and including Prince William, will be continuing with a full programme of engagements despite the fact that the King is not going to be seen in public for some time. Buckingham Palace said last night that the King is remaining positive about his diagnosis and his treatment and looks forward to returning to public duties as soon as possible.
OK, Cameron, thanks very much indeed. Well, joining us now is the royal commentator, Jenny Bond. Good morning to you, Jenny. Hindsight's a fascinating thing. We can't help but look differently at those pictures of him walking to church at Sandringham on Sunday and wondering just how he's feeling, because at that time, presumably, he was aware of the diagnosis.
Yes, and I think that was a carefully choreographed appearance. You know, they wanted us to feel reassured when this news came out, as it did. It was quite a shock, I have to say, last night. I don't think anyone could quite believe what we were hearing. And even today, those words, "the King has cancer," you know, they do strike terror in everyone's hearts, even though there has been such progress in cancer treatment. And even though we're hearing such positive vibes from the King himself, and from the palace. But I think back to the Queen Camilla carrying out her engagements last week in the full knowledge that this news had been given to her beloved husband, even going to a cancer opening, a cancer ward opening, and you know what must have been going through her head at the time. So this is a really difficult moment for an elderly couple, very much in love and facing the diagnosis that 1,000 people a day face with the same terror, I suppose, but trying to stay positive about it.
Yeah. The irony is, of course, he's waited so long to be appointed king, and now this.
Yep, I think you're absolutely right, Eamonn. You know, I think alongside the apprehension about what's to come, I think he'll be just thoroughly annoyed with life, annoyed that this has happened to him. He has waited so long. He's got lots and lots of plans, many engagements in the diary, foreign trips abroad, and all of that now has had to be put on hold. It's absolutely not what he wanted. And of all the predictions that so many made about this change of reign, this sort of double whammy of a health scare, and with Catherine alongside having had serious abdominal surgery, no one could have predicted this. But perhaps, just perhaps, it is a blessing in disguise. You know, perhaps we should look on from the point of view that he went in for a benign prostate condition and a cancer has been discovered, and we hope, we don't know that it's been discovered early. Certainly the intervention has been very, very prompt.
Yes, and Jenny Bond, there are hopes, I'm sure, that this could lead to a bit of a reconciliation between father and son in terms of Harry, who we hear is hot-footing it over from LA to be at his father's side at this moment of crisis.
Yes, that could be the other blessing in disguise. He's on a plane right now, as we understand, so he really has shifted himself straight out of California to come over and see his father. That makes you think, oh my goodness me, is this more serious than we're being told? But I think it's just a son's reaction to some pretty shocking news. And yes, could this lead to a reconciliation, not only with his dad? I think that's pretty much on the cards now, but possibly with William, because really William does need his brother right now. That's going to be a trickier relationship to patch up, but we can but hope. It didn't happen when the Queen died. We thought it probably would. I thought surely when your grannies died, you know, and the family's all together, things will go better, but it didn't. They went worse, if anything. But this time, I think the hope must be a little higher.
And Jenny, would it be your understanding that the King would have picked up the phone and phoned both his sons to deliver this news personally?
Yeah, that's certainly the impression we've been given, that he phoned all the members of the family, I think, his brothers, his sister, and probably first of all his son, certainly William. And what terrible news for William as well. You have to feel for William. Suddenly, not only has Charles been sort of brought up short, smack bang, facing mortality, as we all face mortality, but William must be looking his destiny in the eye rather more clearly right now. And right now is not the time that he wants to even think about taking on the duties of monarch, which of course isn't likely to happen because we're told everything's positive with the King. But nevertheless, you know, William's time at the moment is to be a family man, to look after his wife as she recovers, and to be a full-on dad as much as he can. But he is going back to work, as we've heard, and be taking on more duties than he otherwise would have done at this stage in Catherine's recuperation.
Yeah, that's a perfect way of phrasing it, staring his destiny in the eye. We were speculating earlier about whether he might quite legitimately be feeling incredibly isolated right now, having lost his grandmother, one of the few people who understands the burden he faces, his father now being ill, his beloved wife being ill, being estranged from his brother, who he perceived as having attacked his beloved wife, and a wayward uncle. I mean, it's lonely for Prince William, surely.
He must feel alone. And, you know, he's the youngest of all the working royals. I say all, there aren't very many working royals. And so a greater burden is falling on his shoulders. Yeah, it's a lonely place anyway, being a senior member of the royal family. It's very lonely being monarch and being heir too. There aren't many people you can talk to, confide in, befriend. And that's why I say perhaps this is a time when he might feel he needs his brother. I just don't know if that can be patched up, but you would hope so, wouldn't you? You would think they would realise, but for goodness sake, life is too short. Let's just put it all behind us.
Jenny, thank you very much indeed. Appreciate it. And thank you very much for your views on this, gbviews@gbnews.com. Nigel, reflecting what a lot of you are saying, Your Majesty, my family and myself send you all our best wishes for a speedy recovery. Elaine says, we are all concerned and hope the King recovers quickly.
Yeah, Marion says, long live the King. Katrina, God save the King. And Emilio, long may he reign. And we certainly echo those sentiments this morning. And indeed, political and international leaders around the world also sending their tributes. Let's get the thoughts now of our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, because, of course, the King is head of state in 14 countries and a number of other nations, Gibraltar, I think, among other places. They'll be seriously worried about the King this morning.
Yes, there's been a huge outpouring of support and concern for the King following this news from across the Commonwealth and indeed across the world, starting with the President Joe Biden, who was caught on camera last night. Let's have a quick look at what he had to say.
Yes, I'm glad to call. I'm concerned about him. Just heard his diagnosis, but I'll be talking to him, God willing.
Yes, he then went on to tweet that he understood how hard a cancer diagnosis can be because, of course, his wife, Jill, had to have cancerous lesions removed just at the beginning of last year, and he lost one of his sons as well to brain cancer a few years ago. So he really does understand this. Also, we heard from former President and potentially future President Donald Trump, who tweeted in his inimitable style of all capital letters, saying, "King Charles has cancer. He is a wonderful man who I got to know well during my presidency, and we all pray that he has a fast and full recovery." Messages too from across the Commonwealth. In Australia, the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese speaking. Let's have a look at that now.
The thoughts of all Australians are with King Charles and his family. We wish him very much a speedy recovery and a return to his duties as soon as possible.
Yes, and messages from Canada, from countries right across the Commonwealth, and also our near neighbours, President Macron in France, amongst others. Also, I think worth having a quick look at the response here in the United Kingdom. Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, the Labour leader Keir Starmer, both tweeting their wishes for a full and speedy recovery and to the King being back in good health soon. But I think also very significant the reaction from the devolved administrations, Wales and also Scotland, Humza Yousaf from the Scottish National Party, and indeed the very new First Minister in Northern Ireland, Michelle O'Neill. Now, both of those leaders ultimately want Scotland and Northern Ireland to break away from the United Kingdom, but that's something that's being set aside at the moment. Michelle O'Neill, Sinn Féin, of course, she was in fact at the King's coronation, something which would have been unthinkable just a few short years ago. So a real outpouring of support for the King. We understand that he will be continuing his constitutional duties, if you like, the red box of government documents that's sent through to him. He will be continuing to deal with those. He will be continuing to meet with Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, on a Wednesday afternoon. They hope in person, but of course that might need at times to be over Zoom.
Thank you, Catherine. The time 7:15. Let's find out more about the King's health. Consultant medical oncologist Dr. David Panato with this one. Dr. Panato, we're told that the King is hugely positive about what he will be going through. Early detection, we understand, the key to success?
Yeah, that is true. I mean, technically speaking, His Majesty the King has received what we call an incidental diagnosis of cancer. So he was discovered to have cancer as a result of some form of technical investigation, the details of which we don't know, that has brought the doctors to the attention and the hypothesis of cancer, which we now know is confirmed. So this is something that happens in less than 5 or 10% of the patients that suffer from cancer. The vast majority of people will have some form of symptomatic presentation, or they will have screening. So as you correctly say, early detection, essentially through screening in people who do not present with symptoms, is key to identify those cases where the cancer has not spread and where it can be treated radically, and potentially a hope for a cure is possible.
Extraordinary figures. 1,000 people diagnosed with cancer every day. 1 in 2 of us likely to be diagnosed in our lifetime, and a third of those are over the age of 70. What are the most common cancers in men in that age bracket?
Well, as we said, prostate cancer was going to be quite high in terms of the potential risk, primarily because, if you know that you're going to see a doctor for urinary symptoms, as what we thought might have been the cause for His Majesty, you think that prostate cancer is one of the highest. There are many other tumor types, lung, for instance, being quite high in terms of incidence in patients and in people of that age.
Obviously, was it his great-grandfather who had lung cancer? It was all kept a secret, even the extent of his illness from the late Queen Elizabeth. But things like lung cancer, not normally hereditary. What are the hereditary cancers that are in that bracket that are possible for him? I mean, I know the palace has said not to speculate, but I'm just trying to understand probabilities here.
So, hereditary cancers are actually quite a rare form of cancer overall. The key risk factor for cancers have got to do with age itself. So cancer is a disease that by far is led by progressive changes in our normal cells through accumulation of damage in our own DNA. And as you can imagine, this happens over the course of decades. And as a result of a number of risk factors, you can name a lot of them: the diet, pollution, our own habits, all those things can actually lead to these progressive changes. Hereditary cancers tend to happen in younger patients. So, we are seeing actually an increase of cancer cases in patients in their 20s and the 30s. And these particular cases of presentations of cancer at a very early age are the ones where we think that a strong genetic element might be driving the process, as opposed to all the other things that have got to do with the environment and our own individual risks.
Dr. David Pinato, thank you very much indeed. We really appreciate that. Dr. Pinato is an oncologist. Let's have a look at some other stories making the news on this Tuesday morning.
The US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, has arrived in Saudi Arabia overnight. It's the first stop on his latest tour of the Middle East and marks Blinken's fifth visit to the region since Hamas's deadly October the 7th attack on Israel. The visit comes amid a perilous moment for the region, with retaliatory US and UK strikes on Iran-backed militia across Syria, Iraq and Yemen.
A whole day of snow could be on the way, with a yellow warning issued for large parts of England and Wales. The Met Office says the winter weather could lead to disruption with power cuts and travel delays. The warning runs from 3 a.m. on Thursday to the same time on Friday and stretches from Cumbria and the Scottish border down to Cambridgeshire and the Midlands in England.
The actor Ian Lavender, famous for his role as Private Pike in Dad's Army, has died at the age of 77. Lavender, who grew up in the Midlands, joined the iconic show at the age of 22, playing the role for a decade. He was the last surviving star of Dad's Army. He was also remembered for his role as Derek Harkinson in EastEnders.
Don't tell them, Pike. One of the famous lines. Dad's Army, what a classic series, and Ian Lavender, the last surviving member of the cast. Let's get your weather update. Remember, snow on the way as the week progresses. Aidan McGivern.
Hello, very good morning to you. It's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office. It's going to be a cold day in the far north, mild in the far south, and in between a weather front bringing a spell of heavy rain. Certainly a damp start for Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, then the rain edges south into much of northern England, parts of Wales, heavy and persistent for a time around the middle part of the day, and it turns damp later across the Midlands, South Wales and parts of Norfolk as well. But we keep the brighter skies further north. In fact, skies brighten for Northern Ireland and Northern England. However, it is going to feel colder here, with northerly winds bringing snow showers to the north and west of Scotland. The far south stays dry ahead of the rain, but it is cloudy and mild here. 13, 14, perhaps even 15 Celsius. But the rain does eventually arrive into the evening, persisting throughout much of the night. Heavy in places, with that rain especially lingering across the far south and southwest. That's where the mildest air will be, 7 or 8 Celsius. Further north, under clearer skies, a frosty start to Wednesday, but a bright start for Northern England, Northern Ireland and Scotland. Still some sleet and snow showers for the north and west of Scotland, and increasingly for parts of Northern Ireland as well. Bright skies in between any wintry showers. Actually, it's a bright day for many on Wednesday, mostly to the north of the M4 corridor. To the south of that, we do have a lot of cloud and increasingly damp conditions.
Right, amidst all the doom and gloom, the Great British Giveaway, and you could bank yourself £18,000 in tax-free cash.
And here's how you could do it.
This is your chance to win £18,000 in tax-free cash. And if you're thinking, I'd never win something like that, listen to the moment we told Phil from West Yorkshire he'd won our last Great British giveaway.
Hello? Phil, I've got some really good news for you. You're the winner of the Great British giveaway.
You're joking. That's brilliant news.
For another chance to win £18,000 in tax-free cash, text GBWIG to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB02 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday, the 23rd of February. Good luck.
To come on the news front, the manhunt is continuing for the chemical attacker Abdul Azidi. That's next. This is Breakfast in GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christie's Tonight. Weekdays from 9 p.m.
Former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has made her much-anticipated appearance before the Scottish COVID inquiry today. It comes after allegations emerged that she deleted key pandemic WhatsApp messages, used the pandemic to push her own political agenda. But let's just cast our mind back, shall we, to August 2021, when Sturgeon was asked if she'd hand over all her WhatsApps to the inquiry. Here we go.
I think if you understand statutory public inquiries, you would know that even if I wasn't prepared to give that assurance, which for the avoidance of doubt I am, then I wouldn't have the ability. This will be a judge-led statutory public inquiry.
Which, for the avoidance of doubt, I am. OK. Well, you weren't, were you? But fast forward to today, and she was much less forthcoming.
WhatsApp messages between yourself and Mr Yusuf and Ms Lloyd were produced by you. Where did you get them?
They were provided to me through the Scottish Government.
But did you delete them?
Yes.
Did you consider yourself, against that background and your considerable ministerial experience, to be precisely the right First Minister for the job?
No, that's not how I would have thought of it at all. There's a large part of me wishes that I hadn't been.
All right, then. I'm joined now by Tory MP Lee Anderson. Lee, are those just crocodile tears?
Well, it looks like crocodile tears to me, Patrick. I mean, first we had the missing camper van. Nobody knows where that is. Now we've got this nonsense. We've got these burner phones, dodgy £5 phones from wherever they bought them from, WhatsApp messages going missing. It all looks a little bit dodgy to me. I mean, she's bleating on there, she's crying on screen. This is not cutting no ice. You know, it's crocodile tears. It makes you wonder what the SNPs are all about, Patrick. It looks... I mean, the people that have burner phones, let's be clear, people that have these dodgy phones where you can't trace them and disappearing WhatsApp messages, these are normally criminals, these are drug dealers, and you know what, these SNPs are no better than criminals.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Rishi Sunak here. Join me for a special GB News People's Forum Live on Monday the 12th of February. I want to hear about the issues that matter to you. For your chance to be part of the audience and to put your questions to me, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com. See you there.
Now, the manhunt for the chemical attack suspect... Oh.
OK, go on.
No,
go ahead, sorry.
No,
No, please.
Okay. The manhunt for the chemical attack suspect Abdul Azaidi has now entered its 6th day as the Metropolitan Police are appealing to anyone with information to come forward.
So yesterday, a 22-year-old was arrested, later released for suspicion of assisting the alleged chemical attacker.
The suspect's been on the run since the attack on a woman and her 2 young girls in Clapham last Wednesday.
OK, we're now joined by our reporter Ray Addison there. Ray, what can you tell us?
Well, while this still very much is a nationwide manhunt, police say the focus is on South London. The last known sighting of Azaidi was 9:50 on Wednesday evening in the Suffolk Bridge area. Police releasing a still taken from CCTV footage, which shows Azaidi walking along All Hallows Lane. This is after he's come out of Tower Hill Tube Station. I think we can show you that image. And for people watching, listening on the radio rather, just to describe it, he's walking along, he's got his hands deep in the pockets of his black jacket and the hood pulled up tightly around his head. He's wearing grey trousers or jeans or a tracksuit, and he also has a pair of white trainers on, but you can still see that quite distinctive injury to the right-hand side of his face. Now, we know that an arrest was made in the early hours of yesterday morning, around about 12:45 a.m. A 22-year-old man was arrested on suspicion of assisting an offender, and police telling us that they suspect that the assistance was provided after that incident on Wednesday night, not in the arrangement of that incident. That person was taken to a police station in South London and then subsequently bailed in the afternoon. We did hear from Met Police Commander John Saville. Here he is discussing that arrest.
We arrested a man in London on suspicion of assisting an offender. We took him to a police station in South London where we've interviewed him. We're following up further lines of inquiry from there, and I further urge anybody that's got any information to please come forward. We are saying that members of the public, if they do see him now, don't approach him, ring 999 and we'll get there quickly and we'll arrest him. We are keeping a very open mind as to where he may be and what might have happened to him, but the CCTV at the moment, there's no suggestion that he's gone near the water.
Well, police have been tracking Azadi's bank card. He was using that as he navigated his way through London's tube system. They say the last use of that was on Wednesday evening. So there's 2 theories. He's either now come to harm at some point, or somebody is potentially sheltering him. Also, the police told us they have recovered his mobile phone. That was quite difficult because they had to take it out of his vehicle, which had this corrosive material in it. They're now analysing that phone to try and track down his contacts and see if one of them might be sheltering him. They're also analysing the phone taken from the 31-year-old woman who was injured in that attack to try and figure out what her relationship is to Azaidi, because they haven't been able to talk to her because she's still so poorly.
Thanks, Ray. Appreciate it. We'll leave it there. Re-retirement, and a lot of you quite worried about this now, because the idea is that in about 20 years' time they're going to raise the retirement age to 71 for men and women, and this was a theory put forward. Linda in Barry says this is disgusting. You're lucky if you ever reach retirement in a healthy situation. Andy says they never did want the working class to have a pension. And a very good point from Penny in Watlington. Where is Watlington?
Oxfordshire, somewhere around there. Yeah.
Part of the issue is that older people started work at probably 16-ish. Today, workers often don't go into the workplace until they're 23, so they have less years to contribute, and also less years for their bodies to be worn out if they do manual work, I suppose, as well.
There's not a single email saying they welcome this. Everybody really concerned about it. I mean, the government at pains this morning to stress that this wasn't a proposal that they were putting forward. It was an independent paper on it, but it certainly feels as though that's the direction of travel. You only have to look at what's been going on in France, and then all the Gilets jaunes protests in response. It's a pretty unpopular move.
But here now, a tribute for people who are over 70 already and still working away. Paul Coyte. which is good.
Yes.
You look well on it, I tell you.
Well, you know what? I work out. I have a very clean living life.
Haven't you?
You know what? I have. I've started the Couch to 5K again.
Yes.
I've
Did you
stopped.
ever get to the 5K?
No.
How far from the couch did you get?
Yeah, put it this way. Every time I've done it, I've always been closer to couch than 5K. But I started yesterday, and the thing is, you start with a little walk and a run, and I've probably got halfway through, and then I've fallen back to couch, but I'm going for it again.
Well, could you walk us through the sport after the break?
I'll give it a go. I'll couch through the sport, absolutely.
Can't wait. Back after this.
...2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together. For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Welcome to the show. Superb stuff, great footage. So you're right in the thick of it there. What's the mood on the ground?
Well, I've left there now. I've actually now come to that EU Council summit that I was talking about. It's still pretty chaotic. The entire city of Brussels has been completely clogged with these tractors, sort of three abreast in most of the roads across the city. The people of Brussels aren't particularly happy. I mean, this is sort of reminiscent for some people of the Just Stop Oil protests, you know, people gluing themselves. People are unable to get to hospital appointments, and there's a lot of upset about the destruction that's happening on the streets of Brussels today. But on the other side, there's also the protests, which the farmers are saying that EU green laws simply are not able to fit with what they need to do to keep their businesses going. And just before the protests happened, we saw the European Commission actually make some concessions to the farmers' protests. And this is on the demands that were put on them to set aside somewhere in the region of 5% of their land for regrowing for biodiversity. A lot of the farmers have said that's not possible, and the European Commission has said that they can delay that coming in. So they have won a small concession with these protests.
And Jack, there's a feeling as well, a huge dissatisfaction that the European Union has managed to find 50 billion euros in aid to send to Ukraine, and yet farmers in particular are on the receiving end of net zero targets, taxation on diesel and endless red tape. So many farmers, Jack, saying they're measuring ditches to see if they have to drain them or not. There are minimum requirements on the width of battery hen enclosures. Endless red tape, as Jeremy Clarkson pointed out in Clarkson's farm in Britain. They've simply had enough, and they're shouting, Ursula von der Leyen, we are here.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, there's a Formula One story over all the back pages today. We go to Paul Coit for this one, and this is about the principal of Red Bull, Christian Horner.
Yes, Christian Horner, who's... Yeah. Is it, because I always say married to Jerry Halliwell, that probably helps. Halliwell. He is Mr. Halliwell. And,
Mr. Ginger Spice,
I'm
technically.
Sure, and I think he really likes to be referred to that. I think so. But anyway, Red Bull, his team are investigating.
She asked me to have her babies once.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
What?
Just serious.
Well, so obviously, she actually went up to you and said... Will you
be sit?
Really? Oh, right, is that what it was? Well, how?
Well, anyway.
You can't leave me hanging like that.
That was before Mr. Horner came along.
Oh, was it? I'm sure it was.
Yeah, okay. So what about Christian Horner?
Listen, as far as Christian Horner's concerned, I mean, he's a big star and he's the principal of Red Bull. Their new car will be announced or revealed on February the 15th. We're right before the start of the new season, which happens in the next couple of months. We're about to start testing. There's Christian Horner there. Huge success at Red Bull. But the story is this. There's a complaint of inappropriate and controlling behaviour made by a female colleague at Red Bull. Now, official at Red Bull's HQ in Salzburg, they haven't gone to this person hasn't gone to HR within the racing team, but has gone to the main office in Salzburg. They're now investigating this, and there's an independent lawyer who's going to be looking across the whole story and what's going on. Now, so it's a whole conduct inquiry. He denies the allegations, emphatically denies the allegations, and we just don't know where this is going to go. Now, I'm looking deeper into this, and there is a power struggle that's been happening at Red Bull ever since the man who founded Red Bull, whose name is Dietrich Mateschitz, is his name, and he died about 18 months ago, very close to Christian Horner. And often when you have someone that's the head of a company and then there's the power struggle of who's going to take over, there's problems between the racing team and then the main headquarters. So I'm not saying that this is affecting the allegation, but what I'm saying could happen is that we're hearing more about it because it's probably in some people's best interests that Christian Horner is out of the way. So that's the way things are looking at the moment. So,
OK, football last night, Man City came back, Phil Foden hat-trick, came back against Brentford, 3-1 the score there. We go back to Sunday, and it was Arsenal 3, Liverpool 1 as well.
That's right, yeah.
Now, Arsenal are in trouble. They're being criticised for what?
Over-celebrating. Now, listen, as a Spurs fan, you'd probably expect me to say, oh, yeah, Arsenal. Yeah. I've got no problem with that whatsoever. Do you, Isabel, with as well?
I can't stand people sucking the joy out of football.
Exactly.
And the next thing they can't stand is this extra 10 minutes we play at the end.
I know, I know, that's the bit
really
you hate.
I think, like, give us an extra 2 minutes injury time, 3 minutes maximum, but that's your lot. This nonsense. 12 minutes injury time now, just ridiculous.
I'm not with it. I don't mind it so much. I really don't, unless... I'm saying that because often Spurs are up and then they lose a goal in the 94th minute. But as far as over-celebrating is concerned, that's what it's all about. It's about the joy. It's about your team winning. It's about the excitement. That's what sport's all about. And if you're going, oh, well, you can't celebrate too much... That's just nonsense. Just let everybody enjoy it.
Or is this at the end?
This is at the end. This is the end. I mean, it's
fine at the end. You fill your boots. I'm not sure about doing somersaults in the middle when, you know, things are tense still.
To think, oh, hold on, we've got to go easy. But it's because other teams have said, well, you know, it's not like Arsenal have won the title, but they managed to beat Liverpool. They're in the title race.
A win's a win.
A win is a win is a win is a win. And if you want to celebrate a win, feel free, knock yourself out.
Footballers have this ridiculous phrase, respect, you know, this word respect that they use. You're disrespecting me, man.
You know, on my daughter's wedding day, you respect you. That's what it's all about.
But goal celebrations, I mean, you get booked for taking your shirt off. You know, that's a ridiculous thing as well.
I always do that anyway when I'm on the side. Swing my jacket around. I get very excited.
So we've no difficulty with that. But Chelsea may have difficulty. There's lots of talk about Maurizio Pochettino not producing the goods at Chelsea. Right. And there has been talk, we've seen it in the papers, is it time for him to go? But what's the snag here?
Well, the snag is financial fair play, profit or PSR as it's now being called, profit and sustainability rules. To cut a very long story short, if Maurizio Pochettino is sacked by Chelsea, it's going to cost them around 10 million quid. So he gets paid off. His team will get paid off. They get paid, like we often say.
Team, you mean his physio?
Yeah. There's three of them in all, and they'll have to get paid off as well. It's the only job in the world where you will be paid off even if you fail, and that will then affect Chelsea's bank balance and the profit and sustainability rules, and they're already fighting that already. So it's actually not good for them to sack him because it's going to cost them too much money and then it will affect the books. So maybe they just have to keep him there. See, the other thing is that what they've tried with players is put them on long contracts and say, right, 8 months and then we can space the payments out and then they can do that. They're not going to go to Maurizio and say, listen, any chance we can pay you off in about 10 years? And he's going to go, I don't think so. So it may be in their best interest to keep him. It may work, but,
that would be a good pension.
It wouldn't be bad, would it? He's got a few of those.
We're talking about a bit of skiing.
Yes. Are you a skier? Have you been a skier?
No.
Isabel, you ski?
I'm a nervous Nelly, but I can ski.
Love it. Just love that. And terrible. But there's a Swiss skier called Daniel Yule. Now, he's made history at the Chamonix World Cup Slalom. Now, what he did was actually went from last place to first place, and it's the first time this has ever happened. He was in 30th place after his first run, so they get 2 runs, and they average out the time. So his first run, 49.02 seconds. His second run, 47.22 seconds, more than a second faster. And believe me, a second is a lot in any sport, and in skiing, it's a huge amount. So a second faster than his nearest rival. They're putting it down to climate change. And usually...
Well, look, everywhere outside of the piste that he's doing the slalom on is snow-free.
Well, this is the second run, because this is the afternoon. Now, it's 12 degrees in Chamonix, and it's usually about 3 degrees is the warmest it will get at this time of the year. So they're saying that the snow was melting, which made it faster for him to ski. Because he was in 30th place, he was the last one to go. It's made it much quicker, it's slushier, and he's actually flown through and smashed all of the opposition. So the answer is, if you're in a situation like that, go slow to start, and then go last. There's the answer. Do what Daniel did.
Yeah.
OK.
A little skiing tip for everyone.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you very much indeed. Paul Coit there with your sport. Still to come, we're talking about whether Liz Truss's new popular conservatism will win people over. Next on Making the News.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
Lots of people have different ideas, but principally a conservative approach to getting growth is to reduce taxes so that people, ordinary people and businesses can spend more of their own money to invest and grow the economy.
So the theory is that you cut taxes and that then pumps more money into the economy.
Exactly right. And then people, you know, it's not government that are creating wealth. It's individuals, businessmen, companies that create wealth. It's the private sector that creates wealth, that the public sector then taxes and spends.
I get the theory, but one of the criticisms of you,
sure,
and I think one of the criticisms actually of all political parties, is they appear to be incapable of cutting government spending.
That's the key. I mean, and I think when I look back, is that we should have had a credible plan to reduce the increase in spending. Now, that's often a difficult concept to explain.
But it's in line with inflation, etc.
That's all right. So when you're slowing the increase, it means, you know, one year you spend £100 and the next year you spend maybe £101 as opposed to going up to £110. So the actual level isn't going down, but you're slowing the increase. And that's very much what I tried to do. And actually, looking back, the one thing I wish I'd done, was to present a credible spending plan at the same time as the tax cuts that we announced.
You had a go, it didn't work out for whatever reason, and that analysis will go on for some years to come. We have Jeremy Hunt there as Chancellor now, hinting quite strongly now there won't be any tax cuts, but the truth of it is, under 14 years of Conservatives, for a variety of reasons, the tax burden has risen.
That's right.
To the highest since the Attlee government, way back in
80 years,
1951,
years,
whatever
right.
it is.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
So we were talking about this earlier in the week, and the Prime Minister has insisted he has now closed asylum loopholes, which say I can, amid growing fears of a pray-to-stay scam. Right, so this is people on board the barge in Portland, and if they find the Lord, it's very good with their asylum claim. We've got Scarlett Maguire and Oscar Reddrop. Oscar, your opinion on this?
Well, I think the story in itself is in some ways a side issue. There will be, I'm sure there are plenty of loopholes that can be discussed and will be discussed in government, really contentious issues. And these are small kind of subheadings to, I think, the contentious issue and the issue for, you know, Number 10 and the Conservative Party moving forward into the next election. I think there are elements of the party, wrongly or rightly, that believe if the government are not as hard as is, you know, humanly possible on immigration, then, you know, electoral kind of oblivion awaits. And I think it's just another example of the story hitting the front pages, middle pages, comment pieces, everywhere you go.
But what I'm finding it hard to believe, to understand, is why does one's religious outlook affect whether you should be a British citizen or not?
Well,
yeah, I agree, actually.
It's not whether you should be a British citizen, it's whether you can be sent back. And I think it's a real issue that we're not. So they blame the churches and say, "Oh, you're too soft. Anybody who says they're a Christian can come." But are we saying? And I haven't found anybody who will actually say that if people come over here and say, "I'm a Christian, I was being persecuted," which is not true of the person who might or might not be the.
But they're not Christians. They're learning how to be Christians.
No, but you have people who come over and say I'm persecuted. So is that a reason to take people or not? And I just think we have to make up our minds about it. And then of course it's very difficult because then you have people who say, well, I'm learning to be a Christian, I've become a Christian, and the bishops say, yeah, he is. But, I mean, actually, it is the same. And I remember, a friend of mine who was an asylum judge, and I spent a weekend staying at his house when he was trying to decide whether a gay Iranian should be sent back. Because, and he said absolutely rightly, he said, whatever I decide, people will go against. Because either everybody will then start saying, I'm gay too, or else you send a gay Iranian back to Iran where they will be persecuted. And I think it's a very interesting case. These cases are very interesting about how you should look at it.
Yeah. I think it's wrong to blame the church in all of this as well. I heard a bishop yesterday saying, look, if someone comes to us and wants to convert, that's our job. That's everything we.
That's literally,
Literally our job. It's the Home Office's job to decide whether or not that conversion is exploitation of a loophole. It's not ours. And I think this criticism of the church is hugely unfair and totally misunderstanding everything about Christianity fundamentally. But you're absolutely right. Is anyone actually saying, OK, then we are going to send people who say they're Christian back to countries where Christians are being persecuted, and nobody prepared to say that. So where does that leave us?
Absolutely. And instead they go on about the churches and they go on about the NGOs instead of actually dealing with the real question.
Interesting. Right. So we move from migrants to a suicide on board the Bibi Stockholm now. Scarlett, that's you.
So, this is a young man who committed. The Bibi Stockholm is a sort of converted ferry that migrants are put on outside Weymouth. It has managed to unite the people of Weymouth into fury because there are the people who think that the migrants shouldn't be put on it because it's cruel, and there are people who think the migrants shouldn't be put on it because we don't want them anywhere near us. And
it's also where most of these Christian conversions have taken place, isn't it? 40 of them on the Bibi Stockholm.
Absolutely. But what this story is, so one young man committed, an Albanian, committed suicide, and what The Guardian has done is they've gone back to find out about this guy, and and they've made him into a person, because I think the thing about a lot of these asylum seekers is they're just seen as scum, basically, and he's a person. But I mean, the real thing about it is why, if we had a decent asylum system, he wouldn't have been there. There was no question. This was a young man who wanted to come to Britain for work because he saw it as a future. That's fine. He was not a refugee.
Seeker,
he was not an asylum seeker. And he should never, ever have been on the Bibi Stockholm. And it shows how broken the asylum system is, that we're having people, we're putting them up. And I think, I mean, the conditions are not very nice, and you do feel like you're in jail. But actually, he shouldn't have been there in the first place. And I'm sure there are a lot of other people who shouldn't be there too.
Now, there's going to be an announcement this morning. Liz Truss is forming a new... What is it, Isabel? It's not a party, it's a...
Well, it's a conference today, and they're trying to restore what they call a democratic deficit in accountability. Lots of the usual faces. We've got Jacob Rees-Mogg on the show just after 8 o'clock talking about it, but also GB News' Lee Anderson, one of the key people involved in all of this, Oscar. Will Liz Truss... I mean, is she the right person to front this?
So this is a really tricky one, because obviously Liz Truss' time at number 10 didn't go to plan. That is glaringly obvious. However, Liz Truss is someone that many people in the party believe actually has the values and the ideas and the ability, and I know a lot of people watching the TV screens going, "Are you sure? Why?
People
how?"
paying their mortgages would be screaming.
Yeah, I know, completely understood. But that she has a different perspective on what it is to be a Conservative. That again, a lot of the people who will be at this event feel isn't particularly solidly being reflected by Rishi Sunak currently. I think there's Rishi Sunak is clearly a really able, decent... I mean, in the couple of interactions that I had with him, he was... he had a really interesting ability that I don't think a lot of people... I think some people would be surprised by, to make you feel like you matter as an individual. And sometimes that hasn't quite translated,
So what are you saying? She makes snowballs, but someone else fires them?
That's quite a good way. That's quite an interesting way of putting it. I don't totally disagree with that. But because Rishi, I don't think, for some of Rishi's faults, this has created a bit of a vacuum for people who just have a different version of what it is to be a Conservative.
But I think even if Rishi Sunak agreed with everything that the New Conservatives were putting forward, he can't push harder line on immigration or on tax cuts, which are the two big issues, because he wouldn't be able to get it through the rest of the parties. He's between a rock and a hard place.
But a lot of these...
Also, isn't it about time Liz Truss said sorry? I mean, it seems amazing that you have this new lot of Conservatives and they have her fronting it up, the person who, killed the country, frankly.
Guys, we've got to leave it there. We're going to be having a more in-depth chat about this at 8:15 on the programme this morning. For the moment, guys, thank you very much indeed. See you in 45 minutes' time. Morning, Aidan McGivern.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, very good morning to you. It's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office. It's going to be a cold day in the far north, mild in the far south, and in between a weather front bringing a spell of heavy rain. Certainly a damp start for Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, then the rain edges south into much of northern England, parts of Wales, heavy and persistent for a time around the middle part of the day. And it turns damp later across the Midlands, South Wales and parts of Norfolk as well. But we keep the brighter skies further north. In fact, skies brighten for Northern Ireland and Northern England. However, it is going to feel colder here, with northerly winds bringing snow showers to the north and west of Scotland. The far south stays dry ahead of the rain, but it is cloudy and mild here. 13, 14, perhaps even 15 Celsius. But the rain does eventually arrive into the evening, persisting throughout much of the night. Heavy in places, with that rain especially lingering across the far south and southwest. That's where the mildest air will be, 7 or 8 Celsius. Further north, under clearer skies, a frosty start to Wednesday, but a bright start for Northern England, Northern Ireland and Scotland. Still some sleet and snow showers for the north and west of Scotland, and increasingly for parts of Northern Ireland as well. Bright skies in between any wintry showers. Actually, it's a bright day for many on Wednesday, mostly to the north of the M4 corridor. To the south of that, we do have a lot of cloud and increasingly damp conditions.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
When you listen to Nigel Farage's assessment there, do you feel that maybe this is as good as it was going to get, given that we had the pandemic and it was inevitably always going to be a bit of a mixed bag?
Well, I think it's a bit of a poor excuse from Nigel there that they haven't done it properly. The facts are, Nigel, that it's not worked. It's not going to work. Yes, we will rejoin. I mean, are we better off for it? Are they...
Can I jump in there, Charlie? We're going to rejoin under which government? Because Labour aren't going to do that, unless you don't think...
But I mean, it's going to be unavoidable not to join, because I think it's getting worse and worse for us. I mean, let me just say this. Are the NHS better because we're out of Europe? No, they're not, because they're not employing more staff. Is the building trade better off? No. Is travelling abroad or to the EU or staying in the EU, are we better off? No. Are we better off because foods rise because of the EU? No. Are we better off with imports and export? No, because they're taking longer. The overall result is that we're not better off. The killer point here is 57% of the public will now vote to remain. 33% would leave. Surely that's the telling point.
It depends on the pollster, Charlie, because we were talking to a very good pollster earlier who said there's no enthusiasm for any change in a year. Maybe 10 years, they might be thinking about it.
Belinda de Lucia, let's bring you in. I'm sure you want to react to what Charlie said.
I mean, who would have thought that the UK wanting to run its own affairs and making our politicians more accountable would be so revolutionary? EU Parliament voted a majority to get rid of the vetoes, the last remaining scraps of democracy that the EU had. Now, luckily for EU citizens at the moment, you know, it means a treaty change to actually go forward. But that is the mood. The ever closer union. We have dodged a federalised, globalist, international, power-gobbling, anti-democratic organisation, and that's worth more than a few trade and travel perks for a few wealthy people in this country.
Hear, hear. Belinda de Lucia, Charlie Mullins, great to see you both.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there. It is 8 o'clock on the dot, Tuesday, 6th of February. You're tuned into Breakfast. Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster.
A nation shocked. King Charles diagnosed with cancer and set to postpone public duties as he faces treatment.
More details from Prime Minister Rishi Sunak about the King's diagnosis in the last half an hour. Plus, Prince Harry has been spotted at an airport in Los Angeles ahead of his travel to London. More details shortly.
Tributes pouring in from leaders across the world as they wish the King well.
Yes, from the United States to Australia, from Canada to France, messages of support and concern flooding in from all around the world. I'll bring you the details shortly.
Chemical attacker at large. The manhunt for Abdul Azadi enters its 6th day as the Metropolitan Police arrest a 22-year-old man suspected of assisting him.
Police say this is effectively a nationwide manhunt, but the focus is on South London as suspected sightings continue to pour in. I'll have the latest from Scotland Yard.
And in the sport, Manchester City win. There's trouble at Red Bull and a new hero, Ajax. So Haaland, Horner and Henderson.
As far as the weather's concerned, it's a day of significant contrasts. Cold in the far north, mild in the far south, and in between, a spell of wet weather. I'll have the full details in the weather coming up soon.
"14 hours since it was announced that King Charles has cancer and been diagnosed with it. The diagnosis came after successful treatment for an enlarged prostate, where a separate issue of concern was noted.
Well, the King will now begin a schedule of treatment, although doctors have advised him to cancel all public-facing duties.
Speaking to the media this morning, the Prime Minister has revealed he was shocked and sad to hear about the diagnosis, adding, thankfully, it's been caught early.
Well, let's speak now to our royal correspondent who joins us from Buckingham Palace. Good morning to you, Cameron Walker. Listen, it's a bad start to 2024. We thought the panic about royal health was over, and the nation dismayed, frankly, about this latest development.
Yeah, Isabel, I think the nation certainly is, although the Prime Minister this morning has had some words of reassurance, saying that the King's diagnosis, thankfully, was caught early. Of course, medical experts will tell you that if a cancer is caught early enough, it's far more treatable. The Prime Minister also told a radio programme this morning that he was shocked and sad to hear of the King's diagnosis. He was given an advanced warning from Buckingham Palace ahead of the public announcement at 6 o'clock last night, and that was that the King has a form of cancer. He is our head of state, and clearly it is worrying and very concerning. It's understood that it's not prostate cancer, though. This separate cancer was discovered when the King's doctors were treating him for an enlarged prostate, which Buckingham Palace said was benign. And yesterday he started his treatment as an outpatient. So he was going into hospital for the treatment, but he is not staying overnight. He spent the night at Clarence House, just down the road from where I am at Buckingham Palace. Meanwhile, again, in the last half an hour or so, we have seen photographs, or The Sun has published photographs, of Prince Harry's car being spotted at LAX. That's Los Angeles International Airport, ahead of his travel to London. We've been told that he actually spoke to His Majesty the King following that diagnosis, and he has decided to make the journey across the Atlantic to spend time with his father. We know that Prince Harry has not been on the best of terms with his father over the last few years, but clearly this is being seen as some kind of olive branch, and highlights the significance and the seriousness of this situation. Prince William, as you perhaps would expect, is in regular contact with the King, and the King personally told both his sons, as well as his symptoms about his diagnosis, ahead of the public announcement. We're told that the King is still continuing with his constitutional duties, so he will still be going through his red boxes, signing government papers, reading cabinet minutes, as well as having his weekly audience with the Prime Minister and attending Privy Council meetings. But of course, if the medical prospects changes, or his doctors advise it, perhaps those Privy Council meetings can be done virtually instead. And Buckingham Palace are really don't want us to speculate about the kind of medical problems the King is experiencing, other than the fact it is a form of cancer and it's not prostate cancer. It's a very tricky balance for the palace, because on the one hand, the King is a private individual who is allowed to have and has a right to have private medical information. However, he is also the head of state, and therefore the British public and the Commonwealth have a right to know about the monarch's health. It's understood that members of the royal family, the Queen and Prince William and other members, will be continuing with their full programme of public duties. But of course, we're not going to be seeing the King in public for some time. We're told by Buckingham Palace that he is remaining positive and looks forward to returning to public duties as soon as possible.
Thank you, Cameron. Let's go to royal author, Vanity Fair royal editor Katie Nicholl this morning. Well, Katie, this has all changed. The dynamics seem to be changing. You've got Harry coming back from America. You've got William being upgraded here as well, at least in the short term. What's your reading of it?
Well, you're right, Eamonn, and good morning to both of you. No, it's absolutely shifted on its axis, hasn't it? The royal family, and I think with that, the nation. Because, you know, whether you're a royalist or not, I think we do look to the royal family for that sense of stability and continuity. And, you know, the coronation had gone so well. And now, within 18 months of the King's accession, there's a big question mark over his health and his future. This was a king who we know was in a hurry. He was the longest serving Prince of Wales. He was the most experienced monarch by the time he came to the throne. And there was a lot of things that he wanted to do. But given the fact that he's 75, he knew he had to do these things quickly. And he hit the ground running in the most exceptional way. And this is going to be a huge setback for him. I spoke to sources close to the king. This news came as a huge shock to the king, to the queen, and to everyone around them. At the time, he was recuperating at Sandringham, I'm told, rather impatiently. Such was his determination and hurry to get back to work. And he was already doing light desk duties after that procedure for an enlarged prostate. So to discover something is obviously quite seriously wrong, totally separate to what he went in for, well, you can imagine on a personal level how that must feel. But for him as head of state, with that question mark, how is he going to cope with this treatment? Is he going to be back at work as soon as he might and others might expect? There's a lot of uncertainty.
Lots of uncertainty, but also, as the Prime Minister's been saying this morning, early catching of cancer, always a positive thing. And in fact, the King himself being described as wholly positive. Eamonn was talking about a shift in dynamics. Are we also seeing a shift in approach to these sorts of matters from the King himself, an openness and transparency that we certainly didn't get with perhaps some of Prince Philip's ailments, perhaps the Queen's in her dying days, and certainly a generation before that as well?
Absolutely, and you're quite right as well. The King is very optimistic. He's been told by his medics it's been found early and the prognosis is good. And I think what he's done, which is remarkable, and I think, you know, with the Duchess of York, about her breast cancer diagnosis and her recent skin cancer diagnosis, they're being open in a way that's very unusual for the royal family. You know, as Cameron was saying earlier, you know, the British public feel they sort of have a right to know about the monarch's health. And to a degree we do, because if our head of state can't carry out his duties, then we, the taxpaying British public, have a right to know about that. But of course, he's a private individual too. And I think nothing illustrates that better than the fact that he has cancer, as do many people. Many people live with this disease. It's a great leveler. So yeah, you know, I think the public will be very understanding as he moves forward with this recovery. And you know, I'm sure as soon as he's able to, he's going to be back to doing those duties. He'll be reading the papers in his boxes. It's just any public outward work is going to be hard for him. But I think it's worth also pointing out the COVID pandemic changed everything, didn't it? He can get on Zoom, he can hold those meetings, but the King loves being out and pumping the flesh of British public, going and doing those handshakes, doing those walkabouts. And of course, there were some big tours in the pipeline for later this year. Question mark over whether they will happen.
Who may conduct them. There may be a substitute in place there for that. But the whole idea of a slimmed-down monarchy doesn't seem to be such a good idea now with the prominent sicknesses, illnesses of the King and the Princess of Wales. Could this be, I put it to you, however outrageous, could this be an opportunity for Harry to redeem himself and find a role to take the pressure off?
Gosh, Eamonn, that's a big question. I mean, you're sounding like the Princess Royal when you say a scaled-down monarchy isn't looking as great, because you're absolutely right. It's looking distinctly fragile and vulnerable and uncertain. We know the Prince of Wales is going to step up. We've seen the Queen stepping up. Is there a possibility that we can see the Duke of Sussex throwing in his life in California, coming back with his wife and children to a frosty Britain and resuming public duties? I mean, I'm always one to say never for never and try and see the best in everything, but I can't see that happening. I think this is going to be an interesting period for royal watchers, for people interested in the royal family, the dynamics between them, because of course this is going to be the first real meeting between Harry and his father. He flew over for the coronation, but they barely saw each other. He's actually going to get some quality time on his own with his father. And I know Charles is very keen to have some reconciliation with his youngest son. There's, you know, still a huge question mark over his relationship with his brother. I mean, the brothers don't talk. They're completely estranged. And I think I feel very sorry for Prince William in all of this, actually, because I think a huge amount of responsibility is now going to fall to him. And there was a day when he would once turn to his brother and say, we can do this together. They don't have that anymore because they're not a partnership.
Incredibly isolating, and I think we were describing it as staring down the barrel of his destiny at the moment. Katie Nicholl, always great to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you both.
Thank you. International reaction now. Let's go to our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, for that. How's it been going on that front, Catherine?
Yes, good morning, Eamonn and Isabel. Well, positive messages of concern and support for the King have been coming in from right across the world, across all political divides as well. President Biden of the United States was caught on camera last night. Let's have a look at what he had to say.
Yes, I'm glad to call. I'm concerned about him. Just heard his diagnosis, but I'll be talking to him, God willing.
He later tweeted that he understood how difficult a cancer diagnosis is for all concerned. His wife, Jill, had to have cancerous lesions removed just at the beginning of last year. And President Biden also tragically lost a son to brain cancer just a few years ago. So this is something he really understands deeply on a very personal level. The former president and potentially future president, Donald Trump, also tweeting in his inimitable capital letters style, saying, "King Charles has cancer. He is a wonderful man who I got to know well during my presidency, and we all pray that he has a fast and full recovery." Messages of support also coming in from across the Commonwealth. Here's Prime Minister of Australia, Anthony Albanese, speaking a bit earlier.
The thoughts of all Australians are with King Charles and his family. We wish him very much a speedy recovery and a return to his duties as soon as possible.
Worth saying that the Australian Prime Minister would dearly love Australia to become a republic ultimately, but that is something that is being totally set aside at the moment. And I think worth looking too at the response in the United Kingdom. Obviously, the Prime Minister speaking this morning saying that he was shocked and sad to hear the news, but saying that it was thankfully caught early, striking a positive note, saying that his regular contact with the King will continue and that they will crack on with everything. But also Sir Keir Starmer, Labour leader, of course, tweeting, wishing him a speedy recovery. But interesting, the response of the leaders of the devolved assemblies. The Scottish First Minister, Humza Yousaf, tweeting his support and good wishes, and also the very new First Minister of Northern Ireland, Michelle O'Neill, tweeting her good wishes too. Worth saying both of those leaders in Northern Ireland and Scotland, of course, ultimately want the United Kingdom to break away from the United Kingdom, but putting that aside for the time being. So a united message of goodwill from all around the globe.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you very much indeed. Time approaching 8:15. Let's get an update on what else is happening newswise. The US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has arrived in Saudi Arabia overnight, the first stop on his latest tour of the Middle East. It marks his 5th visit to the region since Hamas's October the 7th attack on Israel. He's also set to visit Egypt, Qatar and Israel later this week.
A whole day of snow could be on the way, with a yellow warning issued for large parts of England and Wales later this week. The Met Office says the winter weather could lead to disruption with power cuts and travel delays, and the warning's running from 3 a.m. on Thursday to the same time on Friday morning, and stretches from Cumbria and the Scottish border down to Cambridgeshire and the Midlands in England.
Oil giant BP has revealed profits halved last year as lower oil prices took their toll. However, the company did chalk up a better than expected performance in the final 3 months of the year. It reported underlying profit of $13.8 billion US. That's down 50% from the record $27.7 billion notched up in 2022.
The actor Ian Lavender, famous for his role as Private Pike in Dad's Army, has died at the age of 77. Lavender, who grew up in the Midlands, joined the iconic show at the age of 22, playing the role for a decade. He was the last surviving star of Dad's Army. He was also remembered for his role as Derek Harkinson in EastEnders.
That little clip from Dad's Army and the U-boat crew who have held the the soldiers captive there. Even though you know what it is, you know the punchline, it's still funny. You get the German officer saying, "What is your name?" And Mannering says, "Don't tell them, Pike."
Captain Mannering, you can always rely on him.
Right, the manhunt for chemical attack suspect Abdul Edzidi has now entered its 6th day. The police appeal for anyone with information to come forward.
Yesterday, a 22-year-old man was arrested and then later released on bail for suspicion of assisting the alleged chemical attacker.
OK, let's go to our South East England reporter. That's Ray Addison to tell us more. Ray, good morning.
Good morning to you both. Yes, Met Police saying that they have specialist officers poring over hours of CCTV footage and following up reported sightings from across the United Kingdom. But the focus at the moment is on South London. That's because that's the last known sighting of him in the Southwark Bridge area on Wednesday night at around about 9:50 in the evening. We can see that still of him. He's walking through the All Hallows Lane area. He's wearing a black jacket, his hands deep in his pocket and the hood tight around his face, perhaps in an attempt to try and partially cover up that distinctive injury to his right eye. He's also wearing some sort of grey trousers or tracksuit bottoms, and he has white plimsolls on as well. Now, we do know that there was an arrest in the early hours of yesterday morning, 12:45 a.m. A 22-year-old man was taken into custody on suspicion of assisting an offender, and police saying that assistance that they suspected would have been in assisting Azadi after the attack, not in preparation of the attack. Now, he was taken to a South London police station and later released. Met Commander John Saville gave us more details.
We arrested a man in London on suspicion of assisting an offender. We took him to a police station in South London where we've interviewed him. We're following up further lines of inquiry from there, and I further urge anybody that's got any information, do please come forward. We are saying that members of the public, if they do see him now, don't approach him, ring 999 and we'll get there quickly and we'll arrest him. We are keeping a very open mind as to where he may be and what might have happened to him, but the CCTV at the moment, there's no suggestion that he's gone near the water.
Well, police have been tracking Azadi's bank card, which he was using to navigate London's underground tube system. That was last used on Wednesday night. They say that suggests one of two things. Either he's come to some form of harm or he's now being sheltered by somebody in the community.
OK, Ray, with that, thank you very much indeed. Well, lots of focus on possible snow later in the week. Let's say good morning to Aidan McGivern, who has all the details for you.
Hello, very good morning to you. It's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office. It's going to be a cold day in the far north, mild in the far south, and in between a weather front bringing a spell of heavy rain. Certainly a damp start for Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, then the rain edges south into much of northern England, parts of Wales, heavy and persistent for a time around the middle part of the day, and it turns damp later across the Midlands, South Wales and parts of Norfolk as well. But we keep the brighter skies further north. In fact, skies brighten for Northern Ireland and Northern England. However, it is going to feel colder here with northerly winds bringing snow showers to the north and west of Scotland. The far south stays dry ahead of the rain, but it is cloudy and mild here. 13, 14, perhaps even 15 Celsius. But the rain does eventually arrive into the evening, persisting throughout much of the night. Heavy in places with that rain especially lingering across the far south and southwest. That's where the mildest air will be, 7 or 8 Celsius. Further north, under clearer skies, a frosty start to Wednesday, but a bright start for Northern England, Northern Ireland and Scotland. Still some sleet and snow showers for the north and west of Scotland, and increasingly for parts of Northern Ireland as well. Bright skies in between any wintry showers. Actually, it's a bright day for many on Wednesday, mostly to the north of the M4 corridor. To the south of that, we do have a lot of cloud and increasingly damp conditions.
Well, we are hopefully going to brighten up your day by giving you a cash injection of £1,500 extra every month for a whole year.
Yeah, this is all part of our Great British Giveaway. It's an incredible £18,000 in cash, tax-free, and here's how you can get involved.
There's an incredible £18,000 in cash to be won in the latest Great British Giveaway. Totally tax-free cash that you can do whatever you like with. That works out to be an extra £1,500 to play with each month for a whole year. Money to make each month just that little bit better.
Oh my God, I can't believe it. That's brilliant news.
For another chance to win £18,000 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB02 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday, the 23rd of February. Good luck.
Up next and live, we'll be speaking to Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg. He and Liz Truss are set to launch a popular conservatism branch of the party later this morning. And we'll be talking to him and finding out what it's all about and who will be in it.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
The Camilla Tominey Show, Sunday mornings from 9:30.
Questions to be answered, and there seemed to be a significant amount, does once again point its way to a public inquiry into exactly what happened in this case. Starmer's called for that. Would you call for that too?
I certainly think that first of all, there's one thing that's happening now. The NHS have to order an independent inquiry. That's been done. So they've got to look at all the whys and wherefores of what happened with this man. If it appears that we're not getting sufficient depth and breadth to this, then I think having an inquiry with all the powers that brings would be extremely advantageous. What I don't want is some long-winded inquiry that will take years, by which time other people will have been put at risk and maybe other lives have lost. We know what the problems are here, Camilla. Law's been passed on this. This is all about making sure on the ground we implement the highest degree of monitoring in order to ensure the safety of the public.
Has care in the community failed? I mean, it seems oxymoronic to say that it's care in the community in this case. We know that the number of psychiatric care beds has been slashed from 52,000 back in 2001 to 24,000 now. I've anecdotally, because I wrote my column about this in The Telegraph yesterday, received quite a lot of correspondence from people saying the situation with care in the community is dire. People aren't being adequately monitored. Was it a mistake to close down all of those mental institutions?
I don't think we should go back to those days when we had those appalling institutions where we just lock people away and forget about them, and not just mental health people, but autistic people and disabled people. Horrific way to treat individuals, and you know I campaign on that a lot.
I know.
However, I think if we move into a more community-based approach, which can be really good for many, many people who are on the spectrum and on that scale of mental health, we have to remember there will be a small but significant number who will continue to pose a danger.
Okay.
And that's why monitoring is so important.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Rishi Sunak here. Join me for a special GB News People's Forum Live on Monday the 12th of February. I want to hear about the issues that matter to you. For your chance to be part of the audience and to put your questions to me, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com. See you there.
Political news this morning. At 11 o'clock this morning, Liz Truss will be back in business again. She's launching a new popular conservatism movement within the Conservative Party. And sitting up there beside her while she's doing this, friend of the channel and MP, Somerset MP, Jacob Rees-Mogg. So, Jacob, good morning to you.
Good morning.
What is popular conservatism?
Popular conservatism is proper conservatism put forward in a way that people will like and will see is on their side. It's not a bad thing for politicians to be popular. There's a lot of sniffiness about calling something popular on the grounds that that isn't sufficiently high-minded. But this is about smaller state, lower taxes, less regulation, and democracy, so that the government and parliament can get on with the business of governing rather than allowing it to be done by unaccountable bureaucracies.
You believe that the sort of policies that you espouse will be popular and therefore election winners. But I just wonder if people will see this latest iteration, the popular conservatism or popcon movement, alongside the ERG, the New Conservatives, the Common Sense Group, the Northern Research Group, the Conservative Growth Group, the Five Families. A lot of people will see it's just an example of perhaps the many factions, or dare I say divisions, within the Conservative Party, and that's a bit of an electoral turn-off rather than turn on.
No, this isn't a faction. This is really about ideas and about conservative ideas. It's not about a faction of members of Parliament or a grouping within Parliament. You've got to mention the One Nation group. Within the House of Commons, there have always been dining clubs and interest groups and friends who get together and meet and chat about things. But this is essentially a policy forum to discuss the ideas of conservatism.
Rishi Sunak be a popular conservative?
I would hope so, yes. I mean, he's going to be on the People's Forum at 8 o'clock next Monday, and I think that will be an opportunity for him to show to GB News viewers and listeners that he is a popular conservative.
What about Liz Truss? I mean, you can't deny that her name comes with a heavy side portion of controversy. Lots of people like her for her conservative ideology and commitment to it, but a lot of people see her as having put the country through an extraordinary period of turbulence, all very much around the time of the death of Her Majesty the Queen. Is she necessarily the right person to front this?
I think it's actually rather impressive, both in the case of Liz Truss and Theresa May, that they have decided to remain in frontline politics and bring their experience of government to Parliament and to be part of the country's continuing debate, rather than some former Prime Ministers have done, gone off and advised foreign dictators.
Is this a movement for MPs only, or can the public play a role in popular conservatism?
Oh, it's crucially for the public. Many members of the public will be coming along to the launch at 11 o'clock this morning.
Including our colleague Nigel Farage, I believe. Lots of speculation about whether he at some point could rejoin the Conservatives. You certainly can't afford to keep him at an arm's length, can you? Because there is a huge risk that the Reform vote, who share many of your views on the right of the party, could actually end up splitting the Conservative vote and handing the keys to the Labour Party.
Well, I'm absolutely delighted that Nigel is coming and reporting on the event for GB News. It would be, I suppose, a little bit odd for me to report on my own speech, though no doubt I'll be discussing it later on today on my own programme. So Nigel is a very welcome visitor to the Popular Conservative event, but he's also someone with whom many Conservatives agree on most of the big issues, that Nigel is essentially a Conservative in most of his views.
Have you still got something to give on this front, Jacob? I mean, you don't, with all due respect, my friend, you don't look overly excited about this today. You're not bursting with enthusiasm. If you're happy about it, let your face know it. I'm just saying, I'm just looking at you here and I'm thinking, does this man actually believe in this today?
you're thinking of interviewing somebody else. I've never been somebody who's hopped up and down, either in joy or in displeasure. I've always thought that it was an English virtue, not showing too much emotion under most circumstances. So, no, I'm not going to go hooping and hollering around the place. But I'm delighted by this. I think it's a very exciting. I think it's a very exciting opportunity.
Yeah, you've got to make it contagious, don't you?
Well, contagion isn't necessarily the right word. It brings up ideas of diseases and things like this. This isn't a disease. This is about what people want, and it's about people having the chance to lead their own lives, to be in charge of their own success, and to ensure that the country is governed to improve people's standard of living. And it's not delegated to bodies like the World Health Organization, which we hear so much about, or the European Court of Human Rights, or to the endless quangos that interfere in our lives. That's the thing about popular conservatism. It's about reinvigorating the popular element of democracy that I think, as Margaret Thatcher once said, is fundamentally conservative. What she said was the facts of life turn out to be conservative.
Yeah, well, you just brought up the name that I was thinking of there. Could you call this Thatcherism?
Well, Thatcherism is a term of high praise in conservative circles, as you know, and Thatcherism was popular conservatism in the 1980s, and enormously successful. Reform transformed the economy and made the country much more prosperous than it had been before. So to that extent, this is replicating the approach to popular conservatism that Margaret Thatcher had.
And just lastly, I'm putting myself in the shoes now of Rishi Sunak, shoes that, bear in mind, I think, most people wouldn't envy. A very difficult role in the context of the world at the moment. But you are putting pressure as a group or as a movement today on the Prime Minister to adopt hardline policies on immigration, specifically pulling out of the ECHR and also calling for tax cuts. And I just wonder how on earth he can do those two things, given, first of all, the problems that we've seen from within your own party, the objections from right up the top, the Attorney General, to other people in the Lords, people like Ken Clarke, how impossible that is for him to do. But also on tax cuts. Just this week, we've had Lord Sir Richard Dannatt, General Lord Sir Richard Dannatt, talking about how we need to put more money into the armed forces. How can we make tax cuts in the current economic climate?
Well, I would say that on migration, the Prime Minister and popular conservatism are in the same place, that the Prime Minister wants to stop the boats. He's said this many times. He's taken significant steps to reduce legal migration, which numerically is more important. So we are in agreement with him. I accept that there is no majority in the current Parliament for leaving the European Convention on Human Rights. I think that needs to be something that is in a manifesto before that realistically can be done. On tax cuts and the military, first of all, the military has to show that it is spending the money it gets well. When our aircraft carrier can't get out of port because its propeller is broken, you do begin to wonder if the military are spending money as well as they should and procuring goods as efficiently with taxpayers' money as they should. I'm not against increasing expenditure in the military, but they have to show they've been spending your money, taxpayers' money, my money, well.
Jacob, we'll be tuned in at 11 o'clock. I hope you have a good speech. Thank you very much indeed for your time and your measured enthusiasm today. Thank you very much indeed.
Can you imagine him pooping and hollering? I'm not sure I want to see
he's
that.
He's a hooper, he's a hollerer. I bet you in private he is.
Probably, yeah. We've seen what Michael Gove's like on the dance floor. I imagine he'd be much the same.
Well, got Paul Coyte here, hooping and hollering. Now, if we're thinking about famous people...
Yes.
Are we going to a break? I hear music. Right, we're going to a break. We're going to be talking about famous Dutch people, actually.
Well, I'm thinking because of Jordan Henderson, and I've been trying to make my own list of famous Dutch people. That's the sort of thing I do.
Do you remember Steve McLaren giving that?
Oh, yes, sure.
Where he said, but he's
it's how you say Champions League. Yeah.
Sure,
I've only got Vincent van Gogh and Teach-In, who won the Eurovision Song Contest in 1975. That's where I'm up to at the moment.
Here's the question: why do Dutch people speak like that? Why do they have that way about them? But anyway, we'll be back after some break.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
Affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Elon Musk has announced that the first patients to receive a groundbreaking brain implant from Neuralink is recovering well.
This is all a bit odd. The product, called telepathy, uses a robot to surgically place a computer chip in a region of the brain that controls movement.
Yes, Elon Musk says that the first goal is to enable people to control a phone or a computer just by thinking. He says that initial tests show promising signs of brain activity, meaning that patients with paralysis could one day overcome their conditions.
Not sure about this one. Joining us to discuss this breakthrough is applied futurist Tom Cheesewright. Tom, this sounds, well, slightly terrifying.
I certainly think a lot of people will be thinking this is something out of a sci-fi horror rather than reality. But this is a technology that's been a long time coming. We've been developing direct brain-computer interfaces for a long time, mostly for the sort of therapeutic reasons that are the initial goal, at least, of Elon Musk's Neuralink, to allow people who are perhaps quadriplegic to have direct control via their brains of initially a smartphone and maybe ultimately artificial limbs or a wheelchair.
It does seem fascinating how quickly this technology is moving on. I saw demonstrations perhaps a year or two ago of people playing a very simple Pong game just by thinking, moving sort of one line on a screen up and down. This seems like potentially there has been a breakthrough that means far more complex things can be controlled just by thinking.
Well, there's lots of different aspects to this technology. The initial attempts to interface with the brain used actually quite thick prongs almost that went into the brain, and they were quite solid, and so if the brain moved, they could potentially cause damage.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
The reason Dutch people speak sort of like that, and it's connected to the House of Orange in some way.
What, have an orange in the mouth?
No, the ruler, the rulers, the House of Orange.
Yeah, the William of Orange.
William of Orange,
yeah.
Who then went to Ireland, and then you get a lot of people in Ireland who also speak.
That's why the American accent is actually Dutch, and then you have the Afrikaans and
right. Yeah, there are a role of the Irish.
The Dutch around the world with their accent, with the pannenkoeken.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. It's a cultural sure.
Like like Ian Pearsley would.
That's right. There's really like sure going on there too.
They would still have that.
But that was false teeth, though, wasn't it?
No.
Oh, that was actually.
Never.
Was it an affectation of the Irish?
No. There is a sector of unionism in Northern Ireland. That speak the way the Orange people
with the shirts
speak. But anyway, so that's Gordon Henderson, who's not even famous in his own house.
Yes.
Is now famous in Holland.
He's unbelievably famous in Holland because he's gone over to Ajax, to Amsterdam. So he's gone over there and left Saudi Arabia and gone to Ajax, and everybody's gone, it's Hendomania. It's Hendomania in Amsterdam at the moment. Everybody loves Jordan Henderson.
Back Spygraves.
What?
When it's spring again, we'll bring again tulips from Amsterdam. Yeah.
Let's look with the survey. Max was not Dutch. No, I don't think Max Bygraves was Dutch. Yeah. What was the? There was a house there, and the stair. What was the one about the windmill? Windmills. That's the one.
Where?
That was Max as well.
On this, it was a Dutch song.
Didn't Max Bygraves have an album about the best of Amsterdam songs? I think that's it.
Tulips from Amsterdam.
They have a dearth of famous people. That's the problem. There's not that many famous.
Vincent van Gogh.
The best I can come up with is Yolanda Hadid, who produced Gigi and Bella Hadid. She's Dutch.
Well, every Dutch footballer's famous around the world.
Yeah,
there's lots of those. Was Rembrandt Dutch?
Yes, and Mondrian, the other famous painter.
Right. Was he a painter decorator or was he actual?
You know, the modern.
Right. Yeah. Of course. And Tichin, as I mentioned, 1975 Eurovision Song Contest. Ding Ding a Dong, one of the great songs.
Ding Ding a Dong.
Yeah. That was Ding Ding. No, you're doing a mouse there on the stair again.
Feeling when I'm next to you.
I don't know.
It's my heart. Yeah, anyway.
I know, yeah.
But Jordan Henderson
then, because
his shirt sales have gone through the roof.
Absolutely. Everybody wants... Because everybody loves him. And they're saying that he's the greatest signing that they've ever had. But it's the other way around, because Ajax, what they've always done over the years is produce players and then send them out. Cruyff is the best player they've ever had, without doubt. Always wore 14. Henderson wore 14. So he can't have 14 because they retired the shirt. So there's the shirt you can buy.
Because
the Henderson.
It was Johan Cruyff's number.
Because it was Cruyff's number, always number 14.
What a genius! What a man! What a man!
Did you know that
Geordie was his son?
Yeah, that's right. He did Manchester United, and then went on to be a manager himself. Did you know that Johan Cruyff, in the World Cup final of 1974, if you look at the pictures of Johan Cruyff playing for the Netherlands, they all have 3 stripes on their shirt. Except Johan Cruyff, who had 2.
Why?
And the reason is that Adidas Puma thing again, because the country was sponsored by Adidas, so their shirts were all Adidas. But because Johan Cruyff was such a big star, and he was one of the first ones to actually have his own sponsorship by a company, he refused to wear Adidas, so he had his own Holland shirt for the World Cup final. So if you ever see pictures with 2 stripes with him, everybody else on 3, that's the reason.
Every day's a school day with you.
Thank you very much indeed.
It's supposed to be all the sport.
That's why he.
Max Bygraves, the Netherlands. There you go.
Still to come, should we stop flushing the loo when it's raining?
If it's yellow, let it.
When it's spring again, we'll see.
It's due to the rainfall outside, OK? So a Conservative MP is suggesting that, and we'll be giving you the full details after this very short break.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Lee Anderson's Real World. Fridays from 7 p.m.
Dr. Jane Jones, who's the clinical lead for Care After Combat.
Yep.
Jane, thanks for coming. And just tell me a little bit about your organisation. What do you do?
OK, well, thank you for having me here so we can talk about Care After Combat. So we are an organisation, a charity, who work into the prison system, working with military veterans who've somehow got involved with the justice system and...
So there's quite a high population of ex-servicemen and women in our prisons. Why is that, do you think?
So 2014, the government did a review of who was resident in UK prisons, and what they found were that military veterans are the highest occupational group, and this obviously raises some concerns. So the government wanted to do something about that, and so they supported Care After Combat initially, just as a scoping exercise, really, to see if there was any way we could help these men and women actually, understand the problems that led to offending behaviour and go on to lead successful lives.
So what sort of offending behaviour are we talking typically for people that's in prison that's actually served in our armed forces?
Primarily, it's violence.
Yeah.
So that is the highest offence that we work with.
Okay.
But of course, the military, as with everybody else, it's the full range of offending behaviour.
OK, so we're in a pub, Jane, Dr. Jane, and I guess for some people, the odd tip of alcohol is good, a bit of fun of a weekend, relax, let your hair down. But for some people, alcohol is not always their best friend, and I guess that plays a part in some of your veterans that end up inside.
Absolutely. So, speaking from my own experience, a good 2/3 of the people I work with have some kind of mental health problem or mental health difficulty, struggling to either adapt into civilian life or with some of the traumas they've experienced during service. People might self-medicate with alcohol to manage some of those thoughts and feelings.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, Scarlett Maguire, Oscar Reddrop, they've got the papers today. And we want to start with that breaking story about why you shouldn't flush your loo or fill up your washing machine or do the dishes if there's a downpour outside. Says who, Scarlett?
Says Flick Drummond, who is the Tory MP for Meon Valley in Hampshire. And she's sent notes to all her constituents saying that when there's a storm, you mustn't flush the loo, run your bathwater, have a shower, whatever, because you're adding to the problems of the water companies, because during a storm, that's when they're allowed to let out all the sewage into the rivers, into the sea. And actually, interestingly, Surfers Against Sewage go, stop blaming the public.
Yeah.
I mean, the water companies have got to deal with sewage. It's not that we have to stop,
but they aren't.
flushing the
So
loo.
maybe this is something that people can do in the short term.
Well, I think they're still going to go on doing it. I mean, don't they? I mean, it
Yeah,
is
but what I object
appalling.
to, Oscar, is they're making money out of us being curtailed and controlled.
Well, I think it's a really interesting point because actually, in terms of incentives, contracts, it's going to be very, very hard to turn that around. I think we were talking about that off air, Scarlett. It's going to be very, very hard to get water companies to, in inverted commas, behave. I've got quite a few friends who are journalists, actually, who, because this has been such a big story, an area of controversy, who are almost solely focused on water companies at the moment and kind of picking away. So the issue's not going anywhere. And I think, rightly, the majority of the public, it doesn't sit well with them at all.
Yeah, and tell me this from a Conservative perspective.
Ooh.
How can
I'm
we
nervous now.
an Environment Secretary whose wife is an executive on a water board and is frankly failing to protect our water?
So I know this isn't the popular response, but by and large, ministers, and I know the media get really kind of hung up on stuff like that. They're hugely professional and conscious about relationships and things like that.
We've got it with Gillian Keegan and Fidget.
We do, yeah. But sorry, go on, Scarlett.
It's Caesar's wife. Is Caesar's wife must not. It's not just that she shouldn't do bad things. It's that she must be above suspicion of doing them. And it was a real mistake of Rishi Sunak to do that, to make him Environment Minister.
Because what is the incentive as a citizen for the Environment Secretary to cut bonuses for water executives when that would directly affect the income of his household? I'm not suggesting that in any way he is corrupt, but as Scarlett says, you don't want to see that element of suspicion in anybody's mind. It has to be seen to be above the law as well as being above the law itself.
No, I accept that, and I know it's a really horrible word that, again, most people watching will go, oh, I hate the fact to use this word, but, the optics of it do not look great, and in politics, whether we like it or not, that kind of stuff does matter.
Oscar, if Keir Starmer gains power, will he spend $28 billion on green policies or not?
Well, who knows, Eamonn? I'm sure there's people very close to him who aren't quite sure either. I mean, this is a slight U-turn on a U-turn. It's been going on for weeks and weeks and weeks. I think it is a growing concern amongst the Labour Party. I will absolutely in a second hand over to Scarlett on that, who will probably fire back. Look, he's professionalised the Labour Party. They're obviously in a very, very, very good, very, very good position with the election on the horizon. But I do think this is a really good example of actually quite a few voters thinking, I'm not quite sure what you are yet, and I think they probably need to clear up this U-turn on the U-turn, Scarlett.
Oh, I think they absolutely do. I mean, it is certainly a debate within the Labour Party with a lot of people wanting. You've said 28 billion. They chose to announce 28 billion. I mean, and instead of arguing about the sum, they should be talking about the detail of what it actually means, because actually it's very easy to sell. I mean, you know, one of the things they're going to do is they want to insulate Britain, right? Because I mean, one of the reasons that people's heating bills are so high is because of the housing, and we need, and that would be good. It would make people warmer, lower their bills, and we could have skilled people.
It would lower their
work.
bills as long as the taxpayer wasn't having to pay for it, because essentially that is their own money, which is why there's so many questions about this figure. And obviously they've come out and said we want a bomb-proof manifesto where all the figures stack up. How do they make that stack up?
Because what Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, says is that she will borrow to invest. She won't borrow on a... I mean, so what Liz Truss did was that she borrowed for tax cuts. What this is investment, and the only way to grow the economy is to invest in the economy, and the green economy is where it's a win-win-win. And actually, I think that Labour has to be brave about this, and I think they have to say, this is what we believe in, and this is why we're going to do it, instead of saying we want everything bomb-proof.
Right, let's talk about grammar schools. Oscar, did you go to a grammar school?
We again, in the green room, we talked about this. So I did go to a grammar school. I lived in London, then I moved up north, and it completely changed my life. I was never going to be able to afford private school. And
so you thought grammar school was a really good thing?
I think it's a brilliant thing.
I'm with you. Working class grammar school.
Changed my life in a way.
Isabel's grammar school as well. Scarlett.
No, I didn't go to it. I went first to a comprehensive and then to a private school. But actually, what I mind about grammar schools is you lot all managed to go, but these days, to get into a grammar school, you need tutoring, and you need to pay for it.
I wouldn't have had that.
And it's not open to everybody. And when my kids were ready to go to grammar school, I mean, it was quite interesting. The people I knew who wanted to send their children to grammar school paid an awful lot of money in tutoring, and the other kids who didn't have money didn't do it. And what I found so appalling is that the 11 plus to get into grammar schools, you can't just be good at your primary school. It takes maths that is above the level that's taught.
How can you be lamenting this when the Labour policy and all of this on adding on VAT to school fees is going to force children out of the private sector because parents can't afford the increase of 20% on top of the fees they already pay? They will then be able to afford the tutoring. They will then get the places in the expensive houses near to the grammar schools. And it's those children from deprived backgrounds that are bright that get squeezed out, the very people that Labour should be representing.
They get squeezed out anyway. They get squeezed out anyway.
This is going to increase it under Labour.
No, it really won't, because what's so important about is that schools are a business. Schools should pay VAT, and that money goes into.
But the implication is that in some way, parents who pay school fees are tax avoiders. When in actual fact, there should be tax incentives because they are taking away from pressure on the state. Their children, they're paying taxes for other people's kids to go to state school, and they're paying school fees.
Isabel, they're paying school fees because they think that they get more, and it's not just a better education. Actually, it's about contacts. I mean, that's what private schools are about. But
quick 30 seconds, Oscar, from you on this, your experience. And
I just think, you know, in the grammar school I went to, and it's all, you know, your own experiences, there are people from all walks of life, you know, all different kind of socio-economic backgrounds. I think that is hugely important. And I think, you know, honestly, even at that young age, being given that opportunity to go to a school like that, when you know the burden on your parents financially isn't there, it's a wonderful thing. And I think
what about the secondary modern kids? That's what you have to think about with grammars.
I look at it and I think,
I get that.
Lucky the way it turned out for me, but I think the reality is what you predict. That's it. Guys, thank you very much indeed. Here's your weather.
I really enjoyed it. Thanks, guys.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxing fixed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, very good morning to you. It's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office. It's going to be a cold day in the far north, mild in the far south, and in between a weather front bringing a spell of heavy rain. Certainly a damp start for Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, then the rain edges south into much of northern England, parts of Wales, heavy and persistent for a time around the middle part of the day, and it turns damp later across the Midlands, South Wales and parts of Norfolk as well. But we keep the brighter skies further north. In fact, skies brighten for Northern Ireland and Northern England. However, it is going to feel colder here with northerly winds bringing snow showers to the north and west of Scotland. The far south stays dry ahead of the rain, but it is cloudy and mild here. 13, 14, perhaps even 15 Celsius. But the rain does eventually arrive into the evening, persisting throughout much of the night. Heavy in places with that rain especially lingering across the far south and southwest. That's where the mildest air will be, 7 or 8 Celsius. Further north, under clearer skies, a frosty start to Wednesday, but a bright start for Northern England, Northern Ireland and Scotland. Still some sleet and snow showers for the north and west of Scotland and increasingly for parts of Northern Ireland as well. Bright skies in between any wintry showers. And actually, it's a bright day for many on Wednesday, mostly to the north of the M4 corridor. To the south of that, we do have a lot of cloud and increasingly damp conditions.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
So the highway code was amended recently. Passed me by, but anyway, a new poll suggests this has made no difference to the safety of road users, and I could believe that.
Yeah, there was an awful crash in London, wasn't there? A bus and a pedestrian yesterday.
Fatality.
So we're asking, is the highway code fit for purpose, or should we just scrap it altogether? That's our debate this morning, and we're joined by Danny Kelly. She argues highways are not fit for purpose, and cycling instructor Anna Hughes thinks they are. Good morning to you both.
You see, Anna, I think it's a good thing. I think the highway code is a good thing. I just don't think that any of us pay any attention to it, or we should all be tested on it quite regularly, I would have thought. We should have revision courses in it.
Yeah, I think you just summed it up, Eamonn, by saying the changes passed you by. I actually asked a few of my fellow cyclists and pedestrians, what is classified as vulnerable road users, about this very thing. I said, has the new highway code made things safer for you? And most people said, not at all. Drivers don't know what it is. They don't know what the changes are. They probably don't know what the rules are to start with. And as you've just said, doing refreshers is a really good idea. It's a bit bizarre that we're given a license to operate this quite dangerous machinery, and then we're never tested again, and especially not on the highway code, which is, especially when it changes, why wouldn't we be retested on that or have to do refresher courses on it? You know, there are conflicts on the road, there are fatalities. It makes sense to be aware of what the highway code says, because it is there to keep us safe.
Yeah, Danny Kelly, when I think back, I think it was 1999 I passed my driving test. Hardly any bikes on the road then, to be honest, probably virtually none.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock on Tuesday, the 6th of February.
Welcome on board. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
A nation shocked. King Charles has been diagnosed with cancer and is set to postpone public duties as he faces treatment.
Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has revealed more details about the King's health diagnosis. Meanwhile, Prince Harry has been spotted at an airport in Los Angeles ahead of his flights to London. More details shortly.
Tributes have poured in from across the world, and as world leaders wish the King well. We'll be letting you see what they've been saying.
Here in Westminster, Sir Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak are united in wishing the King a swift return to health.
In other news this morning, the chemical attacker remains at large. The manhunt for Abdul Azadi is entering its 6th day as the Metropolitan Police have arrested a 22-year-old man suspected of assisting him.
As far as the weather's concerned, it's a day of significant contrasts. Cold in the far north, mild in the far south, and in between, a spell of wet weather. I'll have the full details in the weather coming up soon.
Thanks very much, Angie. Thanks for getting in touch, gbviews@gbnews.com. My personal opinion of Harry visiting his dad is a tad cynical. Him and her realise, that's Harry and Meghan, realise they're not as popular as they used to be. They're not a popular couple now, and they think if Harry visits, then he'll go up in popularity. Well, you see, I actually think there's truth to that. I think he would go up. I think people would be accepting of him, but less so her.
I think that will be an uphill struggle for her. Lots of people really quite dismayed about the news this morning. Barbara says, my family and I are very shocked and saddened to hear this dreadful news. Please get well soon. Mag says, I'm devastated at the news of our King. He'll be in our prayers of the nation. And of course, one of the reasons the King's been so transparent in all of this is because of the huge numbers of people that get diagnosed with cancer themselves. And so for a lot of you, this has struck a chord. Janet says, King Charles's diagnosis is too close to home for myself. I lost my dad last March to pancreatic cancer. I had to have bereavement counselling as I couldn't cope. 1 in 2 people will face a cancer diagnosis at some point in their lifetime.
It's a hateful disease, absolutely hateful. But positive vibes coming out of the King's camp, and he's facing it with great positivity. So shock yesterday, shock at 6 o'clock last night, as King Charles revealed that he has been diagnosed with cancer. It came after successful treatment for his prostate, where a separate issue of concern was noted by doctors.
So the King has now begun a schedule of treatment, although his doctors have advised him to cancel all public-facing duties. Speaking to the media this morning, the Prime Minister has revealed that he was also shocked and sad to hear about the diagnosis, but he added that, thankfully, it's been caught early.
Well, joining us now, our road correspondent Cameron Walker. Cameron, I'm sure you witness, as we do here on our social media, a huge outpouring of sympathy towards the King on this one. What are you seeing outside Buckingham Palace?
Yeah, there certainly is, Eamonn, and I think the outpouring of support for His Majesty is echoed around the world. It's packed with journalists here from across the world, from America, Australia, and everywhere else as well. Of course, it was a shock announcement from Buckingham Palace last night at 6 o'clock. It is worrying that the King has been diagnosed with what Buckingham Palace described as a form of cancer, but Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, in the last hour or so, has given slightly more details, saying that thankfully the King's diagnosis was caught early, and of course any medical expert will tell you that if the cancer is caught early, it's a lot easier to treat. We've been told by Buckingham Palace that it's not prostate cancer. If you remember, a few weeks ago the King was in hospital receiving treatment for an enlarged prostate, which was benign, and it was during those tests and during that treatment that doctors discovered this separate issue. So yesterday the King started his course of treatment. He's being treated as an outpatient in hospital, so he's not going to be spending nights in hospital. He's living still at Clarence House, but he is travelling to a hospital in London for treatment on a regular basis. Meanwhile, the Duke of Sussex, Prince Harry, having been told personally by the King about his diagnosis and them having a bit of a chat, he's been spotted in Los Angeles this morning ahead of his at an airport, LAX, ahead of his flights to London. So perhaps we could expect to see Prince Harry arrive in London to see the King later on today. As you would expect, Prince William, we're told, is always in regular contact with His Majesty the King. We're also told that the King can very much carry out his constitutional duties as monarch. So although we're not going to be seeing him in public anytime soon, he will still be working through his red boxes, signing government papers, reading official minutes from cabinet meetings. He's also going to be doing his weekly audience with the Prime Minister and attending Privy Council meetings too. So a worrying time, but the King is staying positive and looking forward to returning to public duties as soon as possible.
Cameron,
Thanks, Cameron.
thank you.
Thank you.
Joining us now is the health editor of the Sunday Express, Lucy Johnson. Good morning to you, Lucy. Look, it's interesting. He sort of walked down an avenue he couldn't turn out of, really, by being so open about going in for this procedure for an enlarged prostate, clearly not realising what this would eventually lead to and being forced, I suppose, to make this announcement about the shock cancer diagnosis. But he's taking a very positive attitude in all of this and I suppose hopeful and conscious of how many other people are affected by this dreadful disease as well.
Absolutely. And in fact, he's very health conscious and has, enjoys an outdoor life. He doesn't drink, he doesn't smoke, he doesn't have any of the other factors that are linked with a high risk of cancer. So it may have come as quite of a shock, although 1 in 3 of us does eventually end up, developing cancer in our lifetimes. So it must be a shock for him and for all the family. But he is lucky to be treated early and for it to be picked up early. And in fact, recent figures from the charity Catch Up with Cancer show that over 200,000 people were not treated within 2 months of an urgent referral, 200,000 people with cancer since 2020. So I think there's about 1 in 3 of the population has to wait more than 2 months for treatment. So it's brilliant news that he's got in there early. For every month's delay of treatment for cancer, it's a 10% increased risk of death. So, there's every reason to be hopeful and positive about the prognosis.
And Lucy, we're talking about 400,000 people in the UK with, unfortunately, that diagnosis. But the thing that amazed me, and we talk about treatment there and the waiting lists and whatever, he's being treated as an outpatient, which means he can go to a hospital, go to a unit, get whatever treatment, whether that's chemotherapy, radiotherapy, I don't know, you'll know much better than me. And then he can go back to his everyday life. I didn't know you could do that.
It absolutely depends on the type of cancer and the stage it's at, and the person. And it could be that something's been picked up in the urinary system because that's where investigations were going on, and it could be that he's half of cancer patients will need radiotherapy, and the London clinic where he's being treated does have good radiotherapy. So it could be that is what's going on. It could be chemotherapy, which would mean that he needs to avoid the risk of infection, and that may mean that it's better that he doesn't carry on with his public duties. But it's clearly a treatment that is not going to knock him out, because he is carrying on with his paperwork and he's very positive about returning to duties as soon as possible. Yeah.
Lucy, thanks for that. Thank you very much indeed. We've got to leave it there. Lucy Johnson is the health editor at the Sunday Express.
Let's bring in our political editor, Christopher Hope, now. Rishi Sunak was informed of this news before all of us in the media, and we're told he will continue with his weekly audiences with the King. Whether or not that's in person or on Zoom remains to be seen. What has the Prime Minister been saying about the King's condition this morning?
Well, that's right. He's making very clear how shocked we all were. I was yesterday in Northern Ireland, of course, so a big moment there for the Stormont Assembly to be restored today, the executive yesterday, and the PM was meeting with doing usual day's rounds there, and he was as surprised as us all to hear what the announcement is overnight for yesterday night at 6 p.m. from Buckingham Palace. He's made clear today that all of Westminster is sending its wishes. You've got Sir Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, Rishi Sunak, of course, issuing the same remarks, saying we hope he can come back as soon as possible and get well soon. That's the point. And we've got messages in overnight from President Biden in America, the French leader Emmanuel Macron and others. So real concern for him, and that's why I think that's united almost. And that's almost to have downplayed the political drama of today. We have today this meeting of the popular Conservatives in a building behind me where they'll be trying to set out a new way for the Tory right. But I think the tone of that meeting will be dialed down a notch or two.
Who did they aim this at? We had Jacob Rees-Mogg on the programme earlier this morning, and I wasn't sure I was much clearer at the end of it as to who popular conservatism was for. Are they a pressure group? Do they have a preferred candidate, Christopher? What's the aim and the objective?
Well, the aim is to try and put pressure on the leadership, on Mr Sunak, to bring back more, as they would see it, policies that might appeal to more on the right. Now, I see this as a problem that Number 10 caused themselves by removing senior right-wingers from the top of the party, Suella Braverman and others, and not really replace them with people from the right. Those on the right have formed their own group called the Popular Conservatives. Liz Truss is the lead speaker. She's got a book out in April about 10 years to save the West or something. It's going to be try and set out her view of how to run a country, despite her failing to do so in 41 days, we remember vividly. So the idea is to try and draw the centre, Number 10, back to the right of politics. That's what's going on here with the policy of stopping the boats, low taxes and the rest. We know it, we're familiar with it. Mark Littlewood, a former head of the Institute of Economic Affairs, the Thatcherite think tank, is going to run it. I think this is really an issue, as I say, it's a pressure group. What Tories do, if they can't feel they're being heard by the leadership, they form a pressure group. We know there are 5 families, the ERG, the European Research Group of Tory MPs, on the Eurosceptic wing, common sense Tories on the left of politics, and so it goes on. So really, this is almost an eruption from the right of the party to put pressure on the PM.
Christopher, thank you very much indeed. We leave Chris Hope there. We've got Britain's newsroom at 9:30 with Andrew and Bev. Good morning.
Morning. Morning.
Well, you've been looking at things today. What do you make of what's going on in the world?
Well, it's huge, isn't it? Worldwide, this story, the King, interrupting news broadcasts in the United States, all around the world. It's extraordinary. The power of the British monarchy. It's astonishing, isn't it?
And you spent many years as a royal correspondent, something of a royal expert.
Yeah.
I mean, he'll be devastated. 72 years waiting for this job.
I know.
And 18 months into it, this setback.
And you can't underestimate it. He's 75. He's sick. It's serious. No suggestion that he's not going to get better. But, yeah, it's a huge setback for him. You can tell it's serious. His prodigal son is returning.
I'm sort of failing to be shocked. And what I mean by that is everyone's talking about this shock diagnosis. He's a 75-year-old man. 50% of us get cancer.
Yeah.
I'm finding it hard to be shocked.
I think it's just like with all cancer diagnoses, it comes left field. You know, you're going about your business and suddenly you've got a cancer diagnosis. But, you know, in itself, it's not necessarily shocking. It's just the timing of it comes when people aren't expecting it.
Do you know what I think? I think the reason it's maybe taken the nation by surprise is it comes so hot on the heels of having lost the Queen. And so we feel like he has been, as you say, Isabel, in this job for 5 minutes. So I think...
Also, I think, Beverly, we see our own mortality through famous people. So whether they're pop stars, film stars, or in this case, monarchy, we sort of think, oh, it's happened to him, it could happen to me.
And also, we've got the Princess of Wales, who's sick too. We're not going to see her till the very earliest Easter. And the royal family prides itself on being very healthy. I mean, the Queen went on to...
so much for the idea of a slimmed-down monarchy.
Quite.
I mean, look, as a husband and a father and a grandfather, all of those things, I wish him well, absolutely. But how many people are currently on the NHS waiting list for cancer treatment that will not get the kind of treatment that he will have?
What about Harry? On his way.
I hope he comes back and apologises to his father for causing him so much stress and anxiety, which can't have been very helpful.
Would you go as far to say welcome back into the fold if he came back without her and you give him the odd little job on a Saturday or whatever to do to take the pressure off?
Give him a Saturday job.
He would, because he'd leak everything. for money. That's the problem. They can't trust him. The trust is broken.
This is what happens with families, isn't it? They have breakdowns and then there is often some unexpected consequences. Something like this comes out of left field and it changes the dynamic completely. But, you know,
Can they fix the trust? I'm not sure. Would they tell him what sort of cancer his father's really got?
We've got to leave it there. Thank you. You can trust us in the Great British Giveaway. Enter, have a go. 18 grand could be yours.
We want to turn 2024 into 2020 more with your chance to win £18,000 in cash to spend however you like. You really could be the next big winner of our Great British Giveaway. Phil from West Yorkshire won our last one.
I never won a penny in my life.
Well, congratulations, you've won £10,000.
Oh my God, wow.
For another chance to win £18,000 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB02 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday, the 23rd of February. Good luck.
Up next, we're going to be joined by Royal Historian Rafe Haydel Mancu on the news of the King.
Hi, Rishi Sunak here. Join me for a special GB News People's Forum Live on Monday the 12th of February. I want to hear about the issues that matter to you. For your chance to be part of the audience and to put your questions to me, scan the QR code on screen or go to gbnews.com. See you there.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
So the highway code was amended recently. Passed me by, but anyway, a new poll suggests this has made no difference to the safety of road users, and I could believe that.
Yeah, there was an awful crash in London, wasn't there? A bus and a pedestrian yesterday.
Fatality.
So we're asking, is the highway code fit for purpose, or should we just scrap it altogether? That's our debate this morning, and we're joined by Danny Kelly. She argues highways are not fit for purpose, and cycling instructor Anna Hughes thinks they are. Good morning to you both.
You see, Anna, I think it's a good thing. I think the highway code is a good thing. I just don't think that any of us pay any attention to it, or we should all be tested on it quite regularly, I would have thought. We should have revision courses in it.
Yeah, I think you just summed it up, Eamonn, by saying the changes passed you by. I actually asked a few of my fellow cyclists and pedestrians, what is classified as vulnerable road users, about this very thing. I said, has the new highway code made things safer for you? And most people said, not at all. Drivers don't know what it is. They don't know what the changes are. They probably don't know what the rules are to start with. And as you've just said, doing refreshers is a really good idea. It's a bit bizarre that we're given a license to operate this quite dangerous machinery, and then we're never tested again, and especially not on the highway code, which is, especially when it changes, why wouldn't we be retested on that or have to do refresher courses on it? You know, there are conflicts on the road, there are fatalities. It makes sense to be aware of what the highway code says, because it is there to keep us safe.
Yeah, Danny Kelly, when I think back, I think it was 1999 I passed my driving test. Hardly any bikes on the road then, to be honest, probably virtually none.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
all these royal stories today, the King's health predominating everything. And we joined Rafe Hadel-Mankoo, royal broadcaster and commentator on this. Rafe, how did you feel last night when at 6 o'clock you heard this news?
Well, like the entire nation, of course, shocked. Although at the same time, I have to say, thankful that His Majesty did go in to have a procedure done on his benign enlarged prostate, because it was thanks to that they detected the cancer and, as we believe, perhaps captured in the early stages, making treatment all the more easy. So something to be thankful for if we can about that. It's also worth perhaps noting that today, the 6th of February, is the anniversary of the death from lung cancer of the last king, King George VI, grandfather of our current king. He died in 1952 at the age of only 57. And 70 years ago, you know, the word cancer was a death sentence. And it just goes to show how far we've come from those days, given that so many cancers now are so easily treatable.
The secrecy that was shrouded in. I mean, they built a theatre, an operating theatre inside Buckingham Palace to try and treat him and save him, didn't they? And so much so was their secrecy that even Queen Elizabeth, at the time Princess Elizabeth, had no idea how sick her father was, hence why she was in Kenya on a tour of duty overseas when this happened.
You're right. I mean, we've seen a huge shift in attitudes towards the relationship between the monarch and the royal family's health matters and how much is conveyed to the public. You know, it wasn't that long ago. It was only in the last couple of years of the Queen's life that she went for medical tests in hospital, and they kept the banner flying above Buckingham Palace to show that she was in residence, even though she wasn't. She was in hospital. And it was only when the Sun newspaper got news of this and was about to leak it that the palace had to do a U-turn and admit that Her Majesty was undergoing tests. I think since that point, the monarchy has realized that they need to be rather more open with the public about the monarchy, but at the same time respecting, of course, the rights of any person, be they royal or not, to have some privacy over their health matters. There's a great contrast, for example, with the American presidency. In America, the public expect to know every single aspect of the American president's health, you know, but that's not something that we really have over in this country.
About the King, Rafe, is that he's a fit man. His weight, he's got an optimum weight. He eats once a day. He's big into complementary medicine, so one would expect as well that whatever traditional treatments or mainstream treatments he's getting, he would be supplementing that with the alternative stuff.
Yes, great believer in homeopathy and in alternative medicines as well, as you say, as well, of course, as traditional medicine. And I've no doubt that he's, you know, exploring all of those sorts of avenues and doing whatever he can to stay healthy. Because we have to remember that prior to January, the king was in rude health. I mean, all the indicators were that he's lived a life without any serious ailments. You know, his greatest medical issue came very young in life, in around, I don't know, 1962, 62, 63. He had appendicitis, which was very severe. I mean, he could have died from that. But since then, all the decades of his life following that, he's been in fantastic health. Been in hospital many times, but those were for falling off horses playing polo. So he had many broken bones from being quite such a sporty individual.
It's true. He's been thrown from many a horse, hasn't he, and got up bravely and carried on his way. Rafe Hadel-Mankoo, we're out of time. Thank you very much for talking to us this morning. I just want to finish, really, the programme, just reflecting lots of the views, I mean, endless views coming in this morning, sending good wishes to His Majesty. Elaine saying, we are all concerned and hope the King recovers quickly. Marion saying, sending you best wishes and prayers for a speedy recovery, Your Majesty. You are a wonderful monarch, and your wife, Queen Camilla, and Prince and Princess of Wales are also a credit to our country. Long live the King.
Barbara saying, so very shocked and saddened by the news about our King. Jean says, my heartfelt sadness at this news, wishing you a speedy recovery, Your Majesty. And Shaz sending prayers and good wishes for a speedy recovery, Your Majesty. So we've got lots and lots of views like that, and thank you very much indeed. The website on GB News is available for you to register your views and your sympathies on that, and the great wish that the King will get better and get better soon. We'll say goodbye to you, whatever you're up to today. Have a good day. We're going to be back from 6 o'clock tomorrow.
And you rest assured, any developments on this story, it'll be all in Britain's newsroom with Andrew and Bev. See you tomorrow.
Hello, very good morning to you. It's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office. It's going to be a cold day in the far north, mild in the far south, and in between a weather front bringing a spell of heavy rain. Certainly a damp start for Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, then the rain edges south into much of northern England, parts of Wales, heavy and persistent for a time around the middle part of the day, and it turns damp later across the Midlands, South Wales and parts of Norfolk as well. But we keep the brighter skies further north. In fact, skies brighten for Northern Ireland and Northern England. However, it is going to feel colder here with northerly winds bringing snow showers to the north and west of Scotland. The far south stays dry ahead of the rain, but it is cloudy and mild here. 13, 14, perhaps even 15 Celsius. But the rain does eventually arrive into the evening, persisting throughout much of the night. Heavy in places with that rain especially lingering across the far south and southwest. That's where the mildest air will be, 7 or 8 Celsius. Further north, under clearer skies, a frosty start to Wednesday, but a bright start for Northern England, Northern Ireland and Scotland. Still some sleet and snow showers for the north and west of Scotland, and increasingly for parts of Northern Ireland as well. Bright skies in between any wintry showers. Actually, it's a bright day for many on Wednesday, mostly to the north of the M4 corridor. To the south of that, we do have a lot of cloud and increasingly damp conditions.
Very good morning. So we're going to be talking about the King's diagnosis as well. We're going to be talking to Professor Angus Dalgleish, cancer expert.
And also we're talking about how many people do you think are claiming long-term benefit? Too many. And she's the most unpopular politician in Britain and is today launching a new form of conservatism. We'll tell you later who it is.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's